Chapter 38:13. With a heavy expression, Arbor drew runes and connected them, reinforcing the Vidra talisman, gravity talisman, and shielding talisman on the tree. In the blink of an eye, the tree arbor was on seemed to have disappeared from the world, and no one could find a trace of its aura. She knew all too well what kind of commotion she would cause when she advanced. She didn't even need to think about it, it would definitely be earth-shattering. If everyone rushed over to Feng Mulin's side, wouldn't it disturb her important advancement? Thus, the shielding talisman formation was of the utmost importance. It completely sealed off her spirit energy fluctuations. Even if they wanted to find her, they would have to break through the dozen or so illusion talisman formations first. After doing all this, Arbor used the flying talisman to rise up from the inside of the tree hole. She stuck to the top of the tree hole and looked coldly at the ground. Under the tree hole, on the originally empty ground, Arbor's illusion appeared again. She sat there with a cold aura, just like the real person. Her eyes were sharp, and she looked down on everything. After adding a dozen or so defense talismans to the illusion, a Saint-grade golden talisman summoning talisman floated out of Arbor's fingertip and slowly rippled behind the illusion's head. The primordial beast she summoned last time was too powerful, so after Arbor summoned it for the first time, it would return home on its own. But since it could return home, this Saint-grade golden summoning talisman could summon it again. She just didn't know if it would summon the same species. After everything was settled, Arbor summoned the mechanism diagram from her consciousness and used the ready-made formations in the diagram to set up a triple heaven and earth killing formation within a radius of 5 kilometers. If you dare to break the formation, I'll kill you back to the Yellow Springs. The 9 Hells Purgatory will be waiting for you. No matter who it was, no one could stop her from advancing to the deity realm. 5 Spirit Reincarnation. No matter who it was, if they dared to hurt her, they would die. After everything was done, Arbor expressionlessly put countless defense talisman formations on her body, then slowly closed her eyes. Just like the Mystic Realm and Spirit Ascension Realm, Arbor couldn't hide in the star field to cultivate with such a huge leap in cultivation. Firstly, it would affect her ability to absorb world spirit energy from the outside world. Secondly, it might affect the transformation of her star domain from spirit realm to god realm. The advancement of her god domain was too important. She wouldn't gamble on it unless it was absolutely necessary. The moment Arbor closed his eyes, he could clearly feel the entire star field beginning to close. Fortunately, she had already received the little tree's hint and moved some necessities into her inner world. Her little companions were all left in the star field, including the little blue snake on her wrist. She had also thrown it back. The moment Spirit Realm turned into a star domain, although the star domain was very turbulent, the benefits were also enormous. Although she was alone now, when she thought that everyone was by her side, her heart was filled with endless courage. Xiao Mu was sitting cross-legged in the air a dozen or so meters above the tree hole. As he closed his eyes, he began to absorb the surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Once this absorption began, all the spiritual energy of heaven and earth within 1,000 kilometers of Phoenix Wood was sucked over. It was like a whirlpool that was spinning at a high speed and suddenly exploded in the sky. This was just the beginning. All the teams training in Phoenix Wood couldn't help but stop and look at the strange direction in the sky. Chapter 38:14. Strangely, the sky suddenly turned dark and silent. Qi Xianxian, Duanmu Qing, and the others who were gathered together immediately stopped and looked up. I don't know where Jojo went. He should be fine, right? Qi Xianxian asked worriedly. He shouldn't be. Duanmu Qing shook his head. You forgot that the Venerable Peach Blossom Immortal, His Excellency Little Tai Sui, and the others can come and help at any time. Little Fatty nodded as well. Qiao will be fine. But this strange phenomenon in the sky seems a little strange. Could it have something to do with Jojo? Don't be so suspicious. Everyone talked as they walked. When they saw that the sky had completely darkened, they couldn't help but stop. It was still afternoon, but the sky was already as dark as the middle of the night. It was too strange. The situation in front is unclear. Let's find a safe place to stay first and continue when the sky is normal. Okay. When Jojo wasn't around, everyone was used to listening to Duan Muqing's orders. When they heard him say that, they naturally nodded in agreement. At the same time, many of the other training squads and mercenaries in the Phoenix Woods also stopped. Some cautious team leaders made the same decision as Duan Muqing. They stopped their team's movements and temporarily made everyone stay where they were. Everyone didn't know what was going on. They also didn't know that the sky was changing and that someone was advancing to the godly state. Most people only felt that the sky was so strange that something big was about to happen. Just as everyone was attracted by the sky phenomenon, Arbor, who was hiding in the tree hole and cultivating, could clearly feel that all the spirit chi of heaven and earth was flocking towards her. Right now, the tree she was on was completely enveloped by dense spiritual energy. Eben couldn't see the tree's true appearance. A whirlpool formed by heaven and earth opened above the tree's head. Endless spirit chi swirled in the center. All the spirit chi within 1,000 miles was flocking towards her without any resistance. Even a blind person could see that there was a problem with this level of spirit chi. Outside Phoenix Woods, Gu Yishuan, who was supposed to return to the academy a few days ago, didn't actually go back. As for Huang Qishan, Su Fugue and Zhong He, the three of them were also by his side. 3 days ago, they joined a small mercenary group called Fierce. The leader was a rank 14 Great Spirit Master in his 40s. He had a strong physique that ordinary Great Spirit Masters didn't have. He looked very powerful. Let's go and take a look. The captain of the Quang Meng mercenary team, Wang Quang, was not a person who was afraid of trouble. He was a guy who would appear wherever there was danger. Seeing such a phenomenon, not only did they not set up camp like the other teams, but they were also in high spirits. Although Gu Yishuan didn't say anything, he had some doubts in his heart. For the sky to be so abnormal, it was either that someone was advancing in rank or that a treasure had appeared. Captain. A seductive woman, whose face was painted red and green like a monkey's butt, grinned. Our spy is back. Ah, Little Bean is back. Tell me about the situation ahead. Someone is advancing. It's in the forest ahead. Little Bean's eyes flashed with excitement. He's advancing to the godly state. He's probably about to enter the 5-spirit reincarnation. Then what are we waiting for? Haha. Chapter 38:15. There are actually people advancing in a place like the Phoenix Forest, aren't they just waiting to be killed? The female mercenary in the ferocious mercenary team smiled sweetly, her eyes flashing slightly. Wang Quang laughed out loud and stretched out his large palm, holding the woman's shoulder and nodding approvingly. Yao Hong is right. Everyone get ready, we will set off now. Xiao Dou will lead the way. All right. The dark and skinny mercenary named Xiao Dou immediately stood up and led the team into the Phoenix Forest. The ferocious mercenary team, including Gu Yishuan and the other 3, had a total of 25 people. Huang Qishan approached Gu Yishuan and whispered to him, "Are we really not going back to the academy? Do we still have to go in with them to stir up trouble?" Gu Yishuan clenched his fists unwillingly. "We joined Wang Quang's mercenary team so that we can enter the Phoenix Forest as cultivators. If we leave now, all our previous efforts will be wasted." Another royal school student, Zhong He, could not help but say. Su Fugue glanced at the worried Huang Qishan and grinned. "Brother Huang, you're not scared, right?" What a joke, why would I be scared? Huang Qishan glared at him and glared at Su Fugue. I already said that Brother Huang would not be scared off by a few words from a teacher. Su Fugue shrugged, besides, we are not going to cause trouble. It's just that there is a strange phenomenon in the Phoenix Forest. As cultivators, we have the obligation to go and investigate. Su Fugue's words were dignified and were quite persuasive. If Huang Qishan did not know this person's character well, he would have been fooled by him. Hey, are you guys going or not? At this moment, one of the members of the mercenary team turned around and frowned at the 4 royal school students behind them. He could not help but shout at them. Go, go, we're coming. Gu Yishuan and the other 3 responded and quickly rushed over. Boys, don't worry. Since you are here to train in the Phoenix Forest, we can't let you return empty-handed. Wang Kuang hugged the woman who was twisting and turning around and smiled at Gu Yishuan and the other 3. If you follow Brother Wang, you'll be able to pick up some benefits. Gu Yishuan nodded, thanked Wang Kuang, and quickly followed after them with Huang Qishan and the other 2. Wang Kuang was right. Since they had entered a mountain of treasures, how could they let them return empty-handed? He had to dig up something from the Phoenix Wood Forest to bring back. Otherwise, it would be a wasted trip. Wang Kuang hugged the woman beside him as he chuckled and said, I wonder who it is that has the guts to advance in a place like this. Brother Wang, although I don't know who it is, it's definitely someone with a bad brain. Xiao Dou laughed. There are so many mercenary teams here, as well as teams of experiencers. There might even be some murderers who escaped from the city. Ha ha ha, she's advancing here. Isn't she just waiting to be besieged? That's right. It's fine if you say that she's going to find a secluded place in the city to advance. There are guards in the city to maintain law and order. Even if there are experts who have designs on her, they would still have to consider the people above. One of the mercenaries pointed to the sky. Haha, that's right. Xiao Dou laughed again. Now, this person is a fat piece of meat in the eyes of all the experiencers. Chapter 38:16. Wang Kuang narrowed his eyes and nodded. You're right. Brothers, what are we waiting for? Let's hurry up. Why didn't you stay at home and advance steadily? Why did you have to come to such a holy place to gain experience? This was the way of the world. There were many people who wanted to take advantage of the situation to kill others and steal their treasures. There were a few other bold mercenary teams that moved at the same time as Wang Kuang. They had the same idea as Wang Kuang and the others, which was to rush over and get some benefits. It took courage to advance in such an unstable environment because everyone knew that advancement wasn't something that could be done in a day or a few hours. Especially for Arbor, who had to go through the 5-spirit reincarnation to break through to the immortal state. No matter which part of the process went wrong, all the previous efforts would be wasted. Many of them had been stuck in a certain realm for 3 to 5 years, or even more than 10 years. When they saw others advance, their eyes turned red with jealousy. Under such circumstances, wouldn't it be great to follow the group and cause trouble? Anyway, they weren't the unlucky ones. Everyone was just following the crowd and causing trouble. There was nothing to be afraid of. At that time, when that person failed to advance, there would definitely be someone who would kill him first. Many people had the idea of following along to watch the show and then return with something for free. Killing others and stealing their treasures. Just thinking about it made them excited. Shi Lang and his mercenary group of more than 30 people had the same idea. While rushing, they kept an eye on the changes in the weather and headed toward Arbor's hiding place. As soon as they arrived, Shi Lang found that there were more than 100 people who had arrived earlier than them. These mercenary teams didn't move forward. They were all huddled together and talking noisily. Shi Lang rolled his eyes and went up to greet them with a smile. Hey, isn't this the leader of the Dai, or a mercenary group? Ah, this is Queen Fu Sha from the Doffing tribe, right? Queen Fu Sha, who was wearing a red veil and had a hot body, glanced at Shi Lang and snorted. What's wrong with everyone? Why are you all standing around here and not continuing? Shi Lang smiled wretchedly at the crowd, his face revealing a trace of confusion. Captain Shi Lang, there's something you don't know. There's a large-scale formation here, and we're still thinking of a way to break it. A mercenary group leader smiled and said to Shi Lang, "Ah, that's right, you're a 5th-rank mercenary group. There are no less than 7 or 8 12th-rank Great Spirit Masters in your mercenary group. How about this, let your subordinates try to open this array formation." Shi Lang chuckled and glanced at the mercenary group leader. Wishful thinking. He wanted his subordinates to take the lead. If something happened, wouldn't his men die at the very front? Did he think he was stupid? Shi Lang swept his gaze around with a fake smile. Everyone present has a higher cultivation base than my legionnaires. Why don't you all go first? Everyone secretly cursed the old fox. They hesitated and paced back and forth outside the needle technique. For the time being, no one dared to step forward. Out of the way, out of the way, out of the way. A delicate rebuke came from behind the crowd. Everyone turned around and saw a tall, thin, and average-looking woman walk over. Behind her were 2 young men and 2 young ladies. One of the young ladies looked like a well-bred young lady who had been raised in a boudoir. Chapter 38:17. The girl's face was beautiful and gentle. Her eyes were like a feather as they fluttered across everyone's heart. Especially the tear mole at the corner of her eye. It perfectly complemented her soft face. She was truly a naturally charming little beauty. Lin Jinner was enraged by the way the mercenaries were openly sizing her up, and she roared at the Shi Lang mercenary band, "Are you guys blind? How dare you look at our junior sister like that? Do you know who she is? She is the daughter of the City of Shadows' first city lord, Mu Jinghong. 4th Miss, Mu Xiaoxue." The mercenaries immediately retracted their malicious gazes. The City of Shadows was a behemoth that no one dared to provoke. It was a hidden sect that transcended the 3 prefectures. There were countless experts among them. No one dared to provoke them. Moreover, it was said that their first city lord, Mu Jinghong, was a very unreasonable person who was very protective of her people. For people from such a large sect, everyone had a life lamp. If their life lamp was extinguished, Mu Jinghong would naturally receive the message. Then, they could only wait to be unlucky. Those who dared to challenge the City of Shadows would eventually be killed by the countless experts sent by the City of Shadows. Thinking of this, the few daring mercenaries couldn't help but shudder and quickly retracted their gazes. "Humph," Lin Jinner smiled proudly. Mu Xiaoxue said gently, "Everyone, I'm really sorry. My senior sister's temper is quite fiery. She only wanted to protect me. She didn't mean to target you. May I know why everyone is blocking the way? We want to go into the depths of the forest to pick some herbs. Can't we pass through now?" Mu Xiaoxue was good-looking and very polite. Coupled with her soft voice, the mercenaries around her felt very comfortable listening to her. Hence, one of them couldn't wait to explain to her what was going on. Lin Jinner frowned and turned to Zhao Yi and Chi Fa, "Senior brothers, what should we do now?" The purpose of their trip was to pick the phoenix flower. Xiao Shui was worried that they wouldn't be able to differentiate the real phoenix flower, so she followed along. The journey was really quite bumpy. They didn't want to recall their experience at Oxhead Mountain again. Who would have thought that when they finally arrived at the Phoenix Wood Forest, they would be blocked by some kind of broken array, unable to continue forward. Mu Xiaoxue was also very anxious. The map marked with the phoenix flower clearly indicated the direction. They had to go through this place. What should she do if she was stuck here forever? Why don't you all listen to me? Sure Lang rolled his eyes and said with a smile, since there are so many of us here, there's no reason why we can't even break a small array formation. How about this? Each team will send out 3 of their strongest members and let them work together to break this formation. What do you all think? This is a very fair method. Wang Kuang hugged his woman and smiled. He waved his hand and pointed at the 3 strongest mercenaries in the team. As a result, each team sent out 3 members and walked forward. More than 20 people lined up in front of the array barrier. At the same time, they gathered their strength and threw out a punch. Boom, 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 boom. Huge tremors resounded throughout the entire Phoenix Wood Forest. Chapter 38:18. After a flash of light, the 20 or so people disappeared in front of everyone at the same time, giving everyone a fright. What's going on? Shi Lang shouted in a stern voice, his suspicious gaze sweeping over everyone's faces. The others were also looking at him suspiciously. After all, he was the one who suggested that each team send out 3 people. Now that 20 or so people disappeared at the same time, shouldn't it be his fault? Shi Lang was naturally depressed. His people had also disappeared, okay? What's going on? What's going on? After a few screams, many people suddenly disappeared on the spot. A bunch of idiots. Dai Er's face darkened as she shouted, "Retreat!" This was the activation of the formation. However, when everyone retreated, they felt as if their legs were fixed in place. A layer of floating light enveloped them, and in a matter of minutes, everyone present was dragged into the formation. "Captain, be careful." His assistant, Su Ha, raised his axe and chopped off the head of one of the wooden dummies. The head rolled on the ground. The others were also attacked by dozens of wooden dummies. They stepped on a large patch of yellow sand and held their weapons as they fought against the wooden dummies that surrounded them. Damn it, where did these things come from? Everyone, be careful. Xiao Rou, the maid with a red scar on her face, protected her Miss Xiao Xue as they retreated. The 3-foot-long sword in her hand flew back and forth. Wherever it went, the wooden dummies' heads would be reaped. However, there were too many wooden dummies in this place. It was as if there was an endless stream of them. After killing one batch, another batch would appear. At the same time, the eyeballs in Qiao Mu's closed eyes moved slightly, and she pursed her small, rosy lips in displeasure, enveloping them with dense spiritual energy. Her fingers suddenly moved and quickly formed a seal. 3 runes flew out like flowing light. A bunch of people who deserve to die. How dare you come and disturb Jojo's advancement? Leave all of you behind. For a moment, everyone fighting the wooden dummies in the formation felt the pressure on their bodies increase. Waves of cold wind blew from all directions, rolling up wave after wave of earth tornadoes. "Ah!" a mercenary exclaimed as he was surrounded by a group of wooden dummies. His head was twisted off on the spot. The others' faces changed. All kinds of fire and water spirits attacked the wooden dummies. At first, they didn't want to waste so much spiritual power, but these wooden dummies had suddenly become so powerful that they had no choice but to treat them seriously. They were here to see if there were any benefits to be gained, not to be killed in this strange formation before they even got close to their target. Dell was already regretting her decision. She had always been a very cautious person. Coincidentally, he walked nearby and saw so many people gathered around. His curiosity was piqued. She really wasn't here to break the formation or take advantage of the situation. However, curiosity really killed the cat. Now, the entire team had been tricked by her curiosity. The wooden dummies came one after another as if there was no end to them. They did not know that Arbor had used the mechanism diagram to set up the triple heaven and earth killing array. Right now, they were only experiencing the first stage. Everyone, let's work together and carve out a path. Shi Lang shouted angrily. At this moment, no one could hold back anymore. If they didn't fight with their lives on the line, they might really die here. Everyone waved the weapons in their hands, and all kinds of spiritual energy smashed down without any regard for their lives. Chapter 38:19. Kill. Shi Lang and the others roared angrily as they charged forward and furiously hacked at the wooden dummies in front of them. Gu Yishuan furrowed his brow and kicked away the wooden dummy. He turned around and asked Huang Qishan breathlessly, "Old Huang, don't you think it's a bit strange?" "Of course it's strange, these damned wooden dummies seem to be endless." "That's true." Zhong He nodded. "No, don't you think this method is familiar?" Huang Qishan stilled, but the overwhelming number of wooden dummies that came at them did not allow him to think too much. Everyone wanted to cry but had no tears. They could only wield their weapons and continuously hack, their movements very mechanical. At the same time, 3 fugitives gathered together and did their best to kill the black shadows that flew in front of them as they roared angrily. "Old Hang, how is the formation breaking? We can't hold on much longer here. This is the triple layer killing formation of heaven and earth." An old man with white hair and a white beard who looked benevolent said as he stroked his beard, "The wooden dummies that we just broke through were the first layer of the formation. This is the second layer. If we want to break through, we'll probably have to expend even more effort than before. Old Hang, don't waste words, hurry up." The person who spoke had large and small eyes and a ferocious face. It was the captain of their group of 4, Gue Chiu. He was born with a deformed left hand and was vicious and merciless. His left hand was half the length of his right hand, and his palm was 2/3 smaller than an adult's palm, like the hand of a 7 or 8-year-old child. These 4 people had committed a major crime in Li City, exterminating a medium-sized family, stealing the treasures of the family and escaping. That family's entire family of 208 people had been killed by them. Right now, these 4 people were being pursued by the large and small families of Li City. They had no choice but to run out of the city and hide in the perimeter of Phoenix Wood. Phoenix Wood was extremely large. After they ran in, they hid in it for more than half a month. Right now, the large families of Li City had gathered the elites of their families and formed an adventure team of over 1,000 people in order to enter Phoenix Wood to capture these 4 vicious people. These 4 people had stepped on the bottom line of all the Shouja in Li City. They didn't even let go of a baby who wasn't even a month old. They were truly insane. The reason they came to Arbor to break the array was also because of fate. Among the 4 of them, Old Hang was an outstanding formation master. He could see that there was a large formation here, so he knew that there must be something unusual going on. When the 4 fugitives learned that someone was breaking through to the god realm here, they immediately had evil intentions. He wanted Old Hang to break the formation, kill the person who broke through, and snatch the Dharma treasure from her. After all, those who broke through to the divine realm and wanted to go through the 5 spirits' reincarnation tribulation would more or less bring a few treasures with them to defend against the heavenly fire and heavenly thunder. However, what they didn't expect was that they would only find out how powerful this damned triple-killing formation of heaven and earth was after entering the formation. It wasn't easy for them to rush over from the wooden dummies. Now that they were surrounded by the ghost spirits, they could only bite the bullet and continue to kill. Chiu Gue felt extremely resentful. His intuition told him that if he could break through this formation, he would definitely torture the person in the formation to death to release the vicious aura that had been in his heart for a long time. At the same time, Mingya C's group once again silently encountered Omega Katoku's group. It was a dark day. Fortunately, both sides had night pearls in their hands so they could see who the other side was. Chapter 38:20. They could very well fight over the other party's rubies, but everyone was well aware of both parties' strengths. If they really fought, it was really unknown who would emerge victorious, so there was no need to make a big fuss. Yali pursed his lips and said, "For some reason, I have a premonition that such a big commotion is related to Stoic Face." Those familiar with Stoic Face should know that wherever this guy passed, there was not a single instance of peace and tranquility. The experiential training in north-facing Great Forest and the treasure hunt in the Sun-Moon Mystery Realm were the best proof. Ming Yasi expressionlessly glanced at Omega Kotoku and the others. The two teams silently parted ways and walked in the same direction. Eldest Chin saw that the atmosphere was not good, so he couldn't help but giggle and sway his body. He floated to Ming Yasi's side and said, "Crown Prince of Ming Province, there's an earth-shattering surge of spiritual energy ahead. Do you think we'll be in danger if we go over now?" Ming Yasi glanced at him and replied with a chuckle. This guy was trying to find a topic to talk about, right? While everyone was silently walking, they suddenly saw the tree branches in front of them move slightly. They saw a team of 8 walking over from a slanted path and coincidentally met up with their 2 teams. Ugh! The 3 teams looked at each other and caught a faint hint of gunpowder in each other's eyes. At this time, Omega Kotoku and Ming Yasi simultaneously had the same thought: why did we encounter this guy? Has this guy recovered his strength yet? Ha, ha! What a coincidence, fellow students. Seeing the heavy atmosphere, Mata couldn't help but jest. Eldest Chin waved the small fan in his hand and glanced at them with a grin. He waved his hand at Mo Lien and Duan Yu. "Prince Mo, Prince Chen, how are you two?" Everyone was currently sizing up the two of them from head to toe. If they hadn't recovered their cultivation, after so many days, they should have become stray dogs. But now, Prince Mo, Duan Yu, and the others looked neat and tidy and refreshed, so they should be. Duan Yu curled his lips and smiled faintly at eldest young Sir Chin. "Sorry to disappoint you, but we're doing very well." Eldest young master chuckled, "Disappointed your sister?" One of the Omega Kotoku's men stepped forward and whispered to the Omega Kotoku, "Second young master, we don't have much time left. We need to act as soon as possible." Omega Kotoku flipped over the identity card in his hand and looked at the time on the back. Less than 70 hours had passed, and they still seemed to have gained nothing. Time was indeed a little tight, and they could not continue to mingle here. Eldest young Sir Chin's gaze swept over Mo Lien and company. Jojo isn't with you." Mo Lien swept a glance at him, looking as if she couldn't be bothered with him. When they were teaming up earlier, everyone clearly knew who was on the same team. Now he was deliberately saying this. He wanted to remind him that Jojo was not by his side. Wah, my heart hurts. This guy was purposely poking at his heart. How infuriating! Eldest young Sir Chin blinked as an imperceptible smile hung on his lips. He suddenly pointed ahead. Wow, wow, wow. Look over there. What's going on? Bam, bam, bam. Bam. Following a series of anguished wails, countless people were sent flying and rolled into a pile, their wails echoing everywhere. Duan Yu took advantage of the situation to shift to Mo Lien's side, only to see a man sprawled on all fours smashing over from where he was originally standing. Closely following that, a coquettish woman slammed into that man with a bam and cried out in pain. The array spat them out. Chapter 38:21. Rewind time to 15 minutes ago. Arbor had inserted several Mysticine talismans into the triple heaven and earth killing formation, filling it with ghostly aura. Everyone who entered the second layer of the killing array was killed by the ghost spirits. The mercenaries led by Shi Lang, Wang Quang, Dai, and Queen Fu Sha had truly suffered heavy casualties. In the end, Dai made a prompt decision and hastily expressed her stance, requesting that they be released from the formation. After all, Dai and her group merely rushed over to take a look out of curiosity, but the result was tragic. Hence, the formation spat out Dai and her group on the spot. As for Wang Quang, they originally wanted to enter the formation to search for the person who had broken through, to kill and seize the treasure. The formation had already been broken to this extent, so how could they back out and let their previous efforts go to waste? Moreover, they secretly despised Dai's cowardice in their hearts. As expected, this woman was terrible at leading a team. Retreating in the face of difficulties, haha. Hence, Mo Lian, Duan Yu, and the others outside saw these fellows from the Dai, or a mercenary group, being flung out by the formation and landing in front of them. Duan Yu expressionlessly gazed at those pitiful people who looked like they had weathered many hardships. He asked with a sneer, "Did you see who?" He dared to bet his head that the person who set up the formation was 99% likely their Jojo. These people wanted to break the formation and enter because they wanted to affect Jojo's advancement. That was it, right? For some reason, Dai could clearly sense traces of evil from these people. She had already recognized many of their identities. The Crown Prince of the Divine Province, Tsang Province's Prince Qin, as well as the Crown Prince of Ming Province, the young masters of the Qin estate, and the Mu estate. Why were all these heavyweights gathered here? Dai was a smart person, so she naturally wouldn't go against Mo Lian and her group, whose strength far exceeded normal people. She obediently stood up and straightened out her clothes before bowing to Mo Lian and the others. She said respectfully, "Your Highness the Crown Prince, everyone, our Dai, or a mercenary group, was merely passing by this place and was inadvertently sucked into the formation. I explained this matter to the senior in the formation, and the senior was kind enough to let us out. Our mercenary group had no intention of disturbing senior's cultivation." Mo Lian, Duan Yu, Ming Yasi, and the young masters of the Qin estate couldn't help but look at each other in dismay. What happened? What senior? Shouldn't Jojo be the one in the array? Mo Lian immediately understood what Del meant. Dai, and the others probably didn't see who was inside the formation at all, right? Therefore, she secretly felt that the person who was able to set up such a powerful formation must be an extraordinary senior. Duan Yu also instantly understood Dai's meaning. He speechlessly glanced at this disheveled woman and waved his hand. "Withdraw." Del and the others heaved a sigh of relief. To tell the truth, they simply didn't care about Duan Yu and the others' haughty attitude toward them. After all, these people before them all had extraordinary statuses, and none of them were people that a small fourth-grade mercenary group like theirs could afford to offend. "Thank you for sparing my life, senior." Del swore that she would never be curious about anything that had nothing to do with her anymore. "Let's go." Mo Lian sent a look at Duan Yu, Mu Xingchen, and the others. She immediately abandoned the Omega Kotoku, Ming Yasi, and the others and hurried toward the large formation. Chapter 38-22. He wanted to see who dared to force their way into the formation and wanted to disrupt Jojo's advancement. That person was simply outrageously audacious. This place is surrounded by a formation barrier. Mata reached out to touch the transparent barrier in front of them. "As long as you don't actively attack this kind of large formation, it won't suck people in," Duan Yu said indifferently. "If you accidentally touch it, you'll only be repelled and won't be injured." So that Del and her mercenaries must have attacked the formation before, which was why they were sucked in. Mo Lian's eyes darkened. "How do we get in?" Mu Xingchen asked anxiously, "Will Jojo be alright inside?" After all, according to what Del said earlier, there were more than 20 people who attacked the formation at the same time. More than 100 people had been sucked into the formation. Even if nearly half of them had died in the formation, there were still at least 70 to 80 people remaining in the formation, trying to break open the formation and harm Xiqiao. How could Mu Xingchen not be anxious? Don't worry, I have a way to get in. Mo Lian took out a vine branch from a sapling from her sleeve. However, the vine nimbly drilled through the barrier without any hindrance. It even dragged Mo Lian into the formation. Before Mo Lian went in, she grabbed Duan Yu's arm. Mu Xingchen and the others also hastily grabbed Duan Yu and followed the suction force into the barrier one by one. After the group passed through the formation barrier, their vision darkened. When they opened their eyes again, they were already in a scene of yellow sand filling the sky. Wooden dummies swarmed over from all directions. Just as they were about to attack them, they seemed to have sensed something and moved their arms and legs in a daze. Then, all of them stopped. Mata, who jumped in fright and assumed a defensive stance, immediately breathed a sigh of relief when she saw that the wooden dummies didn't come over to attack. She heaved a long sigh. Heavens, where did Jojo get so many wooden dummies that can run, jump, and hit people? This should be a ready-made large formation in the mechanism diagram. Mo Lian said, Jojo used it to set up this killing array to prevent anyone from getting close to her body. It will hinder her from advancing. It looks like the little stoic is about to advance successfully, eldest young Sir Qin said with a grin. Duan Yu and the others all turned to glare at him. Why did this guy come in as well? Eldest young master raised his hands pitifully and said, I'm also here to help. Humph. Mo Lian glared at him before turning around to walk forward into the sand-filled sky. He had to find the eye of the array as soon as possible and get out of the array to find Jojo's correct position. Unsure if Rotten Peach Blossom was with Jojo, Mo Lian frowned. He still had to find his wife as soon as possible. He didn't feel at ease leaving his wife in anyone else's hands. It was best to keep her by his side. On the other side, Shi Lang and the others were almost driven mad. He looked on helplessly as a level 12 Great Spirit Master mercenary beside him was pierced through by 4 or 5 ghost spirits and turned into black ash. Shi Lang couldn't help but regret rashly entering the array to throw away his life. Gu Yishuan, Huang Qishan, and the others were also starting to regret it now. Especially after seeing more than half of Wang Kuang's mercenaries dead or injured, it was too late for regrets. Now, everyone had almost exhausted all their spirit energy. After 2 rounds of devastation from the wooden dummies and ghost spirits, they were simply too exhausted. Hurry and put in more effort. We'll be able to break this array soon. Chapter 38-23. Bang! Wang Kuang felt that the barrier in front of him seemed to have been broken. When he saw a green forest appear in front of him, he couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief. With her head covered in yellow sand and dust, the bewitching woman who was battered and exhausted no longer had the slightest bit of her seductive appearance. She looked like a miserable beggar, but her eyes bloomed with joy. Brother Wang, we've broken the formation. We've broken it. Thank the heavens, who knew how long they had been fighting with the wooden dummies and ghost spirits in that damned sand formation. At least they were still alive. Looking at her side, of the 25 people in the mercenary group, only Gu Yishuan, Huang Qishan, Zhong He, Su Fugue, Wang Kuang, Xiao Dou, and herself were left. 25 people died to only 7 people. This kind of sacrifice rate was simply shocking. Yao Hong didn't know if she should kneel down and thank the heavens for their mercy. Yes, it was broken. Wang Kuang couldn't help but feel a bit more bitter in his heart. The Phoenix Forest appeared in front of them again, surrounded by trees and green scenery. It was no longer that damned place filled with yellow sand. The unkempt Sher Lang couldn't help but laugh loudly. With a knife in his hand, he glared fiercely, looking back and forth. Come out! Come out for me! This sneaky little person actually hid in the Phoenix Forest and didn't come out. If I catch you, I'll pull out your tendons and skin you to vent my anger. The Sher Lang mercenary group was actually only left with him and 2 level 12 great spiritual masters. The entire Sher Lang mercenary group had suffered a disastrous loss this time. Too deceitful, really too deceitful. On the other side, Queen Fu Sha's situation was slightly better. The 5 people from Shadow City, Lin Zhen'er, Xiao Yi, and Chi Fa were more or less in a sorry state. As the daughter of the first city lord, although Mu Xiaoxue was just an ordinary person, she had the powerful maid Xiao Rou by her side to protect her. In addition, she had many protective treasures. At this time, she looked like the cleanest and most elegant person. Everyone relaxed at the same time and let out a long breath. Sher Lang sat down on a piece of loose stone under the tree. He wiped the sweat off his forehead and said coldly, I didn't expect that formation to be so difficult to break. The others also slumped down one after another. They had fought with their lives on the line with the ghost spirits for a long time, and now they were mentally exhausted. One had to know that the previous wooden dummies were still manageable, but the subsequent fight against ghosts was simply a painful torture. How could an ordinary person fight with a ghost spirit? After they had used up all the talismans they had on them, they could only use all kinds of spiritual energy to deal with the ghost spirits. This was because ordinary physical attacks like punches and kicks were completely useless against the ghost spirits. If one was caught off guard or unable to defend in time, they would be torn to pieces by the countless ghost spirits without any chance of survival. Leader, what do we do now? One of the level 12 soul masters in the mercenary group asked while panting. Of course it's to find that damned person who set up the formation. Sher Lang gnashed his teeth and said. Suddenly, Yao Hong cried out, "Ah, look!" At this moment, everyone was still tense. When they heard this ear-piercing cry, they all frowned at the same time and looked in the direction Yao Hong was pointing at. They saw that behind the level 12 soul master who had spoken, the ground was constantly moving. A white bony arm stretched out from the ground and suddenly grabbed the soul master's neck from behind. Shit! A white bony arm stretched out from the ground. Chapter 38-24. Everyone was greatly shocked as they struggled to jump up from the ground. They took up a defensive battle stance as quickly as they could and surveyed their surroundings. They saw that the skeletons had grabbed the back of the spirit master's neck and dragged him over. At the same time, countless skeletal arms emerged from the ground and stabbed into the defenseless great spirit master's body. Everyone only saw that the great spirit master's body trembled as dense black air began to emit from his body. He was completely done for in less than a second. Waves of fear involuntarily emerged from their hearts. This was too frightening. In front of them was a great spirit master of the 12th level. Although his spirit power had been completely exhausted and his body was exhausted to the point of no return, his cultivation was still at the 12th level. He'd been at the 12th level of the spirit realm, but he'd been strangled to death by a few skeletons that had burrowed out of the ground. How frightening! Threads of cold air emerged from the depths of everyone's hearts. Yao Hong's shrill voice sounded again at this time. Look over here, there, and there. Now that everyone heard her ear-piercing screams, they reflexively tensed their bodies. Everyone's pupils contracted in unison as they looked in the direction she was pointing. There were several places that Yao Hong was pointing at. The earth began to slowly arch upwards. More than a dozen bony arms abruptly shot out from the earth. Run! Someone howled. Everyone turned around and ran towards a path in the forest. They'd been tricked. They'd definitely been tricked. When they saw that a place that looked like Phoenixwood Forest had appeared in front of them, they'd assumed that they'd broken through the formation and returned to Phoenixwood Forest. Humans were like this. Once they returned to a familiar environment, they'd involuntarily relax and slack off. Who would have thought they hadn't left at all? They were still in the formation, but the scene in front of them had changed slightly. That great spirit master of the 12th level had been slaughtered on the spot because he'd let his guard down. The person who'd set up the formation was too good at grasping people's hearts. It was simply terrifying. Gu Yishuan ran a bit slower and almost had his ankle grabbed by the skeletal beast that had shot out from the earth. He staggered a step and gritted his teeth as he threw out a fireball, smashing the skeletal hand to pieces. When everyone saw that he, the rank 10 great spiritual master, was able to shatter the skeletal hand with a single strike, their hearts relaxed slightly. It seemed that it wasn't that these underground skeletons couldn't be resisted. It was just that things had happened so suddenly that the exhausted level 12 great spiritual master didn't have time to resist. Don't let them get close. Queen Fu Sha's expression changed drastically. These skeletons were very strong in close combat, but if they were far away, using spiritual energy to deal with them would definitely be a one-hit kill. Unfortunately, their spiritual power was almost depleted, and they were barely able to keep the distance between them and continue fighting. As Gu Yishuan ran, he felt a sharp pain in his ankle. Earlier, he had been too impatient and only cared about running. Now that he looked down, he was shocked to find that his trousers had been torn open, and there was a very obvious white bone handprint on his ankle. The pitch-black fingerprints made him feel a chill in his heart, and his whole body couldn't help but shiver. No, it's fine. Don't scare yourself. It's just a few more white bone handprints. After we get out, I'll find a way to apply some medicine to remove them. Shi Lang led his only subordinate and ran to the front. Chapter 38-25. Right now, he was so scared that he pissed his pants. He ran for a distance in a panic. Suddenly, a slope appeared under his feet. Shi Lang almost couldn't control himself and almost rolled down the slope. Suddenly, he heard a scream. Yao Hong was the first to roll down the slope. Everyone's expressions changed and they stopped running. Wang Quang, on the other hand, still had some affection for this woman. Seeing this, he hurriedly followed. Suddenly, the sound of spiritual energy colliding came from the slope. Shi Lang and the others were so scared that they almost pissed their pants. They reflexively wanted to run back. However, when they turned their heads, they discovered that the slope was surrounded by a large group of white skeletons. If they dared to rush up, it would be like sending sheep to the tiger's den. Everyone could only run down the slope. When they looked up, they saw that the white skeletons only surrounded the slope and didn't come down. Shi Lang and the others had just run down the slope when they were suddenly hit by a few streaks of spiritual energy. With a wail, they fell to the ground. Who are you people? Wang Quang fell to the ground. His hands were bound behind him by divine power. Half of his face was rubbing against the ground. There was a large shoe print on his face. He was glaring hatefully at a deformed man who was hugging Yao Hong. The deformed man acted as if there was no one around and did not hold back at all as he touched Yao Hong. Slap. Wang Quang's face was immediately slapped. He couldn't help but be secretly shocked. He was a level 14 Great Spirit Master. He was very clear about his strength. However, he was immediately bound by divine power. That ugly deformed man with different lengths on his left and right hands was actually a deity expert. We've already found the eye of the formation. A kind-looking old man smiled and nodded. They came at the right time. Let's use their blood to break the formation. What? Wang Quang and the others showed a frightened expression. They saw the old man suddenly grab the last level 12 Great Spirit Master mercenary in the Shi Lang mercenary group. Amidst his miserable screams, he kicked him into the eye of a whirlwind. Everyone could see with their naked eyes that the person's skin and flesh were scraped off by the eye of the wind. His entire body twisted and fell to the ground. With a bang, he smashed into the eye of the formation. Bang! 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 With a loud bang, the entire formation barrier suddenly disappeared into nothingness. Wong Quang and the others were overjoyed to find that they had really reappeared in the Phoenix Woods this time. They could even smell the unique fragrance of the Phoenix Woods. Old Hang frowned and exclaimed. His eyes fell on a person who was less than 5 meters in front of him. A little girl dressed in a white robe, with snow-white skin and exceptionally delicate features, was sitting under an old tree. Above her head was a whirlpool of spiritual energy. He's going to advance to the divine realm at such a young age. Old Hang smiled with a hint of envy in his tone. How enviable. It's a pity that you don't have the life to continue. Ghost Dragon used its deformed short hand to grab the woman's waist. Yao Hong only felt that the deformed hand was like a soft, poisonous snake. It moved back and forth between her waist and buttocks, causing her entire body to stiffen. A sliver of fear appeared on her face. I hate those arrogant young men and women who rely on their aristocratic family's inheritance the most. Among the 4 outlaws, a well-built man crossed his arms and sneered. This formation made us waste so much effort. We definitely can't let this little girl off easily. Chapter 38-26. Wong Quang and the others didn't dare to respond at all as they listened to the 4 people talking among themselves. These 4 people's cultivation realms were much higher than theirs, so they simply couldn't muster the slightest thought of resisting. Right now, they only wanted to preserve their own lives. As for everything else, they would just take whatever step they took. Since this little lady dares to advance while hiding in this phoenix forest, she must have many good items on her. The outlaw's eyes revealed a barbaric glint. He held a large axe and swung it down at the little lady's head. Wong Quang, Shi Lang, and the others couldn't help but be secretly alarmed by the power of this axe. They estimated that the power of this attack had already reached the level of a level 3 God Realm cultivator, far from what they could withstand. The Phoenix Forest trip was truly too unlucky for them. Bam! However, this strike of the axe only managed to open a tiny crack in the barrier above the little girl's head. It was a very small crack, but the moment the axe was lifted up, it slowly closed up. At this moment, the little lady, who was sitting cross-legged with her eyes closed to absorb spiritual energy, instantly opened her eyes. For a moment, everyone present subconsciously held their breaths. Those eyes were as deep as the night, without a trace of white in them. Her pupils were covered in an abnormally pure pitch-black color, which was abnormally bewitching. The man swinging the axe and hammer was also startled. He tightened his grip on the axe and roared, "How dare you scare me!" Hence, he swung the axe again at the little lady's head. Before his axe could land on the little lady's head, it was abruptly struck by a piercing bone nail and sent flying, smashing into a nearby tree with a swish. Mo Lien, Duan Yu, Mu Xingchen, ACI, and the others walked out of the forest path and sized up these people. Jojo. Ma Ta pointed ahead agitatedly. Wait. Duan Yu reached out to stop him and turned to look at the man who had thrown away his axe and hammer and was looking at them in astonishment. How dare you be so arrogant, Mo Lien sneered and pointed at him. Gu Yishuan and the others were horrified to find that the deity realm expert, who was originally in front of them, had actually been blasted apart by the power of this finger. Fuck. What kind of power was this? Eldest young Sir Qin narrowed his eyes. It looked like this guy and Duanyu had indeed recovered their strength. Now, he was suddenly glad that he didn't act rashly earlier. What was going on? Jojo stood up. Mata suddenly exclaimed. Everyone's attention was once again pulled back, and they all exclaimed in their hearts. Sure enough, the little girl with the cold eyes really climbed up from under the tree. She held the thunderclap sword in her hand and was approaching them step by step. Oh my god, Jojo's current state, why does it make people's hair stand on end? Could it be that this fellow would enter a state of complete disregard when he was cultivating? This isn't Jojo. Yas and the others felt their hearts skip a beat. It's an illusion talisman matrix. When this fellow's pitch-black eyes looked at them, they inexplicably felt a little cute amidst the creepiness. What was going on? Rustle, rustle. A gust of wind rustled the grass. Everyone reflexively turned to look and saw a dozen or so Sir Jojo standing up with the same thunderclap sword and cold killing intent on their faces. Chapter 38-27. Our dear Mo Lien gazed at the pile of wives in front of him and inexplicably thought of those little ones piled on top of him in the Tower of Punishments, desperately clamoring to move the gold. It's over. What do I do when I have no resistance at all? Prince Mo couldn't help but cover his handsome face with his hand. At the same time, more than a dozen expressionless little girls had already stood up from the underbrush. Their pitch-black pupils locked onto their group of external targets with thunderclap swords in their hands, and they closed in on them inch by inch. Duanyu hastily tugged at Mo Lien's sleeve. Hurry and think of a solution. How could he bear to be so ruthless against this pile of Jajas? They couldn't win in a fight, but they didn't want to flee either. After all, Sir Jojo had set up so many illusion talisman matrices here, which meant that her main body was probably nearby. Hurry and think of a solution. They're coming. Mu Xingqian yelled worriedly. The illusion talisman matrices that Jojo had set up on the periphery would probably attack indiscriminately once they were triggered. These weren't their Jajas, they were merely a dozen killing machines. In the blink of an eye, a Jojo phantom wielding a thunderclap sword had already pounced over and unhesitatingly slashed in Lin Jinner's direction. Ah! Lin Jinner was simply about to vomit blood from anger. She hadn't fucking plucked a single phoenix flower along the way, yet she kept encountering life-threatening situations. She recognized at first glance that this stoic face was the damn woman who attacked her group on Oxhead Mountain. This damn little bitch. Did she really think that everyone in the City of Shadows was freaking vegetarian? Lin Jinner had just summoned her spirit weapon from her conscious and was about to pounce on one of Jojo's phantoms. She didn't expect a gust of wind to come from the side. Lin Jinner would never have thought that while she was fully focused on dealing with that little bitch, someone else would actually attack her from behind. She was instantly sent flying by this gust of wind and crashed heavily onto the ground. It was only after Ming Ya's attack that he realized he had some conditions to launch, seeing that Mo Lien, Duanyu, Eldest Qin, and Omega Kotoku were all looking at him. He expressionlessly withdrew his leg. And it was at this moment that the little stoic sword came from the air. The thunder crash sword was mixed with a flash of lightning as it landed heavily on Lin Jinner's left shoulder, completely tearing her flesh apart. Ah! Lin Jinner let out a blood-curdling scream as she was once again sent flying by the ferocious sword light. Senior Lin. Mu Xiaoshua's figure swayed amidst the wind and fallen leaves, which made her two senior brothers' hearts ache. Xiao Yi and Qi Fa quickly ran to their junior sister Xiao Shua's side and comforted her in a low voice. It's all right, junior sister. Zhen is a cultivator and her body is strong. She won't be defeated by this attack. That's right, junior sister. You, on the other hand, have to be careful. Activate the defensive barrier that Master gave you first, so that you won't be accidentally injured by swords and sabers when we fight later. Thank you, senior brothers, Mu Xiaoxue said with tears in her eyes. Go and see Zhen. Be careful. Zhao Yi suddenly bellowed and pulled Mu Xiaoxue into his embrace. He abruptly raised his right hand and sent out a flash of spirit energy, slashing the sword light that suddenly arrived to the side. One of the JoJo phantoms had a cold expression on her face as she quickly slashed at them again. Zhao Yi was enraged. He mobilized all the spirit energy in his body and abruptly punched at JoJo's phantoms. You actually dare to hit my sister? Chapter 38-28. Mu Xingqian couldn't help but be enraged when he saw this. He just so happened to be standing next to Zhao Yi and Mu Xiaoxue. When he saw that Zhao Yi actually dared to attack his sister so fiercely in order to protect Mu Xiaoxue, he immediately drew his sword and slashed at Zhao Yi's arm. Shi Lang, Fu Sha, Gue Qiu, and the others were also being attacked by JoJo's group. Just as they were about to retaliate, they were beaten up by the equally unreasonable Duan Yu, Mo Lian, and the others. For a moment, the scene fell into a rather chaotic scene. If swearing was useful, they really wanted to hurl a string of curses Mu Xingqian, Mo Lian, Duan Yu, Ming Yasi, and the rest of the Imperial Academy students. Were they freaking sick? Or did they cultivate all day at the Imperial Academy until they became stupid? Didn't they see those dozen stoic faces rushing over murderously and attacking them indiscriminately? What was going on? However, that formation master, Old Hang, was especially alert. When he saw that the situation was off, he stealthily slipped out from behind a tree. His formation skills were very exquisite. After he left, he only set up a small smokescreen, which actually prevented everyone from noticing him. By the time another brawny man beside Gue Qiu discovered him, Old Hang had already fled without a trace. That brawny man gnashed his teeth in anger. Damn it! Old Hang, this damn old dog, actually took the chance to slip away. If this old geezer stayed here, he could definitely set up a temporary formation for them and help them escape. However, they didn't expect that this geezer would actually take the chance to run off by himself and leave them here. Gue Qiu's expression also appeared extremely unsightly. His pupils suddenly contracted, and he shouted, "Careful!" A sword intent fiercely attacked the brawny man's back, ruthlessly sending him flying out and crashing into a tree. Ah! The brawny man bellowed. When he flew out, he activated a defensive barrier for himself. Hence, this strike didn't injure his internal organs, but his old face was a bit embarrassed. The little girl's phantom expressionlessly chased after him with a sword in hand. Those who entered the formation would die. The thunderclap sword was instantly raised high. The third move of the Nine Heavens Thunder Sword technique, 10,000 swords returned to origin, was formed in a matter of minutes. A huge sword that covered the sky and the earth whistled as it fell towards the head of the burly man. Everyone's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. Shi Lang cursed angrily in his heart. This paralyzed face's phantom could actually execute such an astonishing sword move. This was too inconceivable. You're not the main body, you're just an illusion of a glyph array. Can't you be more normal? Something even more abnormal was happening next to him. When Mata saw that JoJo had used such a powerful sword move, he stopped fighting and clapped. Wow, JoJo is so powerful. Everyone was speechless. He knew that the people around Xiao Qiao were probably a little crazy. A loud rumbling sound came from the other side. The sturdy man was hit by the sword move, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Before he could turn around, he suddenly felt a chill on his neck. Ghost Qiu was horrified to discover that his companion's head had been sent flying by that little girl's sword. Logically speaking, this girl should be trying to break through to the immortal state, right? But she hadn't reached the immortal state yet. How could she kill his companion, a level 3 god tier master, so easily. At this point, Ghost Joe finally realized how wrong his previous decision was. 2 of the 4 fugitives gave up their lives here. Chapter 38-29. To be able to advance so steadily in the Phoenixwood Forest, how could he not have some sort of skill? Hence, Guo, had truly misjudged her. Guo regretted it now, but there was nothing he could do. He looked at the expressionless little girl who raised her sword and turned around while holding the brawny man's head. When her pitch-black pupils stared at him coldly, Guo shuddered and had the urge to flee immediately. This girl's expression was seriously too strange. She didn't look like a human at all, but like a creature that crawled up from the ground. One of the phantoms raised his hand and waved heavily, and a dozen phantoms pounced toward Guo and the others. Guo made a prompt decision and immediately swallowed a large number of pills. He suddenly stomped the ground and actually used the last bit of Earth spirit energy to escape using the Earth escape technique. He was really a bit scared. This girl's situation was completely different from a normal person's. Could a normal person who hadn't advanced to the god realm kill a god cultivator with one strike? He fled very quickly, and Sir Jojo's phantoms actually didn't chase after him. Her stiff little head turned around inch by inch, and her cold gaze landed on Omega Kotoku, Xiaomushue, Chi Fa, and the others. Everyone retreated in unison and fled behind Duan Yu, Mo Lian, Mu Xingqian, Duan San, and the others with fear in their eyes. They exclaimed, "Hurry and think of a way to leave." Guo escaped using the Earth escape technique, leaving them, the unlucky ones, here. They were surrounded by Sir Jojo's phantoms, so how could they escape successfully? Fu Sha, Wang Quang, Xiaomushue, and the others subconsciously hid behind the strongest person present. As a result, Mo Lian, Duan Yu, Mu Xingqian, Omega Kotoku, and the others were all surrounded by Sir Jojo's phantoms. At this moment, everyone was surrounded in a circle. Their expressions were tense as they gripped their weapons tightly. From the looks of it, they were about to attack at any moment. Mu Xingqian suddenly turned around and punched Xiao Dou beside him. He said angrily, "Don't hit my sister." Everyone was instantly dumbfounded. "All right. Is she really your sister? You need to get a grip on reality. Where did you get so many girls?" "Your Highness." Queen Fu Sha was protected by several subordinates. When she saw that little stoic approaching with a sword in hand, she involuntarily shuddered. Hurry and think of a way to make them leave. She really couldn't control her hand. What if the stoic face meowed and hit her? Wouldn't she be able to resist? This doesn't make sense, does it? Duan Yu cast a sidelong glance at Mo Lian beside him and shot her a look. Mo Lian was a little confused. These people always thought that he had a way to deal with a bunch of Jojo-sama. What was going on? Seeing so many wives jumping around in front of him, he felt very helpless. The figure raised her sword and slashed at them. Everyone cried out in surprise. Mu Xiaoxue clenched the offensive spiritual weapon in her hand and gritted her teeth. Just as she was about to release it, someone kicked her and she fell backward. Ah! Mu Xiaoxue fell to the ground at once, and aggrieved tears welled up in her eyes. Chi Fa and Zhao Yi quickly helped their little junior sister up and glared at Mata. "Why did you hit her? Don't hit Jojo." "What? You bunch of idiots." Chapter 38-30. Didn't you see that stoic face come up with his sword and slash you all together? Now he's attacking indiscriminately. This bunch of idiots' behavior was truly an eyesore. Chi Fa supported little junior sister Mu Xiaoxue, who was on the verge of tears, and gently consoled her before turning to look at them in a huff. In reality, he didn't dare to truly quarrel with Mo Lien and the rest. What if he infuriated these maniacs with explosive combat strength? They might even point a finger at him and kill him on the spot. Hurry and think of a solution. Duan Yu blocked Sir Jojo's lunging sword with a hopeless expression. With his cultivation, it was naturally no problem to deal with the illusions in front of him, but he couldn't do anything. He could only dodge and dodge. Jojo's illusion followed up with a flying kick and a leap, pointing its sword at Duan Yu's chest. Duan Yu heaved a long sigh and raised his hand to pick up this little fellow that was lunging at him. This wasn't an illusion but a solid entity. However, its tiny hands and feet were icy cold, and its eyes were shooting out a vicious glint. Although it was caught by Duan Yu, the thunderbolt sword in its hand was still aimed at his head. Everyone, with this guy's savagery, can't you guys be a bit more forceful and restrain these illusions first? Hey! Duan Yu angrily glared at the unmoving Mo Lien, his handsome face about to turn green. What was wrong with this guy? He dawdled for half a day and still hadn't made a move. He understood now. This guy just wanted to watch him get crippled by Jojo's illusions. What an unscrupulous jerk. How could Mo Lien know what Duan Yu was silently criticizing in his mind? He racked his brains for a countermeasure. The vines were probably useless against these Jojo illusions, but what about the soul fragment? Crown Prince. Mu Xingqian couldn't resist calling out. If this guy still didn't make a move, Jojo's Thunderbolt Sword's illusion really would chop Duan Yu's head. At the critical moment, Mo Lien took out the soul fragment wrapped in the essence of the sacred wood from her inner world. Everything froze in an instant. The expressionless Si Qiao Qiao, who had been slashing and slashing at the crowd, suddenly stopped. Although their pitch-black eyes were unperturbed, at least their gazes were focused. The bunch of Jojo turned their heads mechanically and looked at the soul fragment in Mo Lien's hand. Qin Axayan stared at Mo Lien's hand, and her gaze flickered before she slowly lowered her gaze. She didn't expect Mo Lien would also find a soul fragment of her. Would Xiao Mu tell Mo Lien about her soul self-detonation? That's impossible. Translator's words, S, Duan Yues Ts, Mian, Ways, Mos Mia Mia. She's of course, M.O.T.S. writes her, Jojo, of hers as she was a person who was used to protecting herself, so how could she possibly tell anyone about the soul explosion? Of course. It stopped. Mata breathed a sigh of relief. At this time, Jojo's illusions were all staring blankly at the soul fragment in Mo Lien's hand. Where's Jojo? Mo Lien stroked the little figure in her hand. A certain someone who was pacing back and forth in the essence of the sacred wood turned around and pointed behind a large shrub. Jojo was hiding there as expected. Mu Xingqian and the others all sighed in relief. Just as they were about to walk forward, they suddenly heard a loud boom. The entire Phoenix Wood forest trembled slightly from this huge tremor. The trees rustled and swayed, making creaking sounds. Chapter 38-31. Everyone was running towards the source of the sound when a burst of intense light suddenly exploded in front of their eyes. In an instant, everyone's 5 senses were blocked. Damn it! Gu Yishuan clenched his teeth and endured the pain from his ankle. His body swayed along with the tremors of the earth. Then, he couldn't control himself at all and was instantly flung away by the force of the tremors. He slammed into a mound of earth and his head was smashed open. A miserable scream came from beside him. Gu Yishuan turned his head and saw that the beautiful and elegant little princess of the City of Shadows, Mu Xiaoxue, was also flung to his side. Because Mu Xiaoxue had no cultivation, she was like a duckweed swaying in the water. Along with the tremors of the earth, she was flung to the east and west, constantly colliding with the thorny bushes. There were a few faint bloody scratches on the back of her hands and calves. As such, it aroused a trace of manliness in Gu Yishuan's bones. Such a beautiful girl, but now she was suffering from such an unexpected disaster. How pitiful. Miss Mu. Gu Yishuan hurriedly reached out and grabbed her, barely managing to stabilize his body in the tremors. Mu Xiaoxua looked at him with tears in her eyes and said softly, "Young master, if you save me, I will definitely ask my father to thank you properly." Gu Yishuan's heart skipped a beat. If he could establish a relationship with the little princess of the City of Shadows, then he wouldn't have to worry about his future development. At the same time, Gue Qiu, who had previously escaped through the earth, had no choice but to burrow out of the ground like a groundhog after the tremors. Originally, he wanted to hide for a while longer. Who knew if he would encounter those little perverts again? Who knew, plans couldn't keep up with changes. He was forced to burrow out of the ground, but the tremors in the earth made him swallow 3 mouthfuls of mud and dust. His entire face collapsed. After burrowing out of the ground, he happened to find old Hang standing behind the bushes, controlling a flying sword and mumbling something. Gue Qiu was so angry that his eyes were red. He stepped forward and grabbed the old man's chest. "You old ghost, you slipped away so quickly. So you didn't run away, but came here to get something first. Don't be nervous, don't be nervous." Old Hang comforted him with a smile. "Didn't I see an opportunity and take advantage of a loophole? If it wasn't for that, I would still be imprisoned in that talisman formation. How could this situation have occurred? You came at the right time. The spiritual chi of heaven and earth is in a riot here, which means that the person has successfully advanced into the divine realm and will soon attract the punishment of the 5 spirits' reincarnation." Ghost Zhou was slightly shocked. This person actually entered the deity realm so quickly. However, Old Hang said with a smile, "Don't be nervous. All we need to do is stand here and watch, and take advantage of the opportunity to attack. We don't need to do anything else, and we'll be able to obtain all the benefits." 5 spirit reincarnation, how could a woman successfully pass through it? And in such a chaotic environment, what a joke. The heavenly Tao had always been stricter towards women. Over the years, there had been countless female cultivators who had lost their lives in the 5 spirits reincarnation. Why is it that other people have to die when crossing the 5 spirits reincarnation, but you, a young little stoic, can successfully cross it? That was impossible. In particular, the lightning fire that descended from the sky was simply too perfect and too huge. The strands of spiritual energy that seeped out of it made the people standing in the distance uncontrollably apprehensive. Mo Lian, Duan Yu, and the others, who were madly dashing over, happened to see the lightning fire bombard down with an abnormally mighty momentum. Their hearts couldn't help but skip a beat. Chapter 38-32. Normal people wouldn't be able to withstand such a fierce attack from lightning and fire, right? Old Hang's eyes narrowed, revealing a strange glint. Ghost Qiu looked back, feeling a bit nervous. They've caught up. These students from the royal school were all perverts who did not even bother to reason with you. Boom! Everyone looked at the scene before them in bewilderment. Old Hang's initial calmness turned into terror. The instant he fell to the ground, one of his old legs couldn't help but tremble. Mu Xingqian couldn't help but twitch his mouth. Earlier, he was rather worried that if this lightning and fire came crashing down, Jojo would be smashed to the point of vomiting blood. Who knew that the lightning and fire that came crashing down from the sky would actually strike Ghost Zhou, who had turned to look at them, and turn this unlucky fellow into ashes on the spot. It was truly vanishing into thin air. There was no chance of survival at all. Even the soul remembrance fragments had completely dissipated within the Phoenix Wood Forest. Mo Lian, Duan Yu, Mata, ACI, Omega Kotoku, and eldest Chin all expressionlessly glanced in that direction. It was very normal. Who told you to go near Sir Jojo's cultivation area? They were very calm because they were familiar with Xiao Mu's routine, but that didn't mean that others could be as calm. Queen Fu Sha screamed from her throat, "Aishich! This, it struck the wrong person." Everyone's hearts were probably filled with an inexplicable and bizarre emotion right now. If saying fuck could solve the problem at hand, they could say 100 sentences in a row to vent that trace of, anger in their hearts. After the lightning and fire dissipated, the last bit of smoke and dust also dispersed. Everyone only saw the little girl sitting in the tree hole. She slowly opened her eyes, and a pair of eyes as black as the starry night emotionlessly stared at them. "It's not the real body," someone shouted, and everyone felt a bit of a headache. "How many freaking illusions did you create to wait for them here? Hand over your life." Suddenly, a pitch-black figure emerged from the grass nest and pounced into the cave. Then, it struck the phantom with its palm. Mo Lien, Duan Yu, and the others were caught off guard. When they caught up, they saw Jojo's afterimage instantly dissipating under the other party's attack. Jojo. Even though he knew it was just an illusion, Prince Mo couldn't help but feel his heart clench. In the blink of an eye, the second lightning fire fell from the sky. With a boom, it smashed Old Hang, who was rolling and crawling away from the battle zone, into pieces. No one was lucky enough to survive the thunder fire. Old Hang was dumbfounded. Before he knew what had happened, he realized that his entire body had dissipated. He could only blame himself for being unlucky. Just as he was about to crawl away, he was used as a scapegoat by a black shadow who had launched a sneak attack on him. He was directly hit by the furious thunder fire and was killed in a matter of minutes. The heavenly Tao was instantly enraged. Countless bolts of lightning and fire smashed down with heavenly might. It wanted to exterminate that black shadow that had attacked Arbor just now. Everyone was dumbfounded. The heavenly lightning fire was not something that was easy to deal with. Was it coming for them? How freaking blind was the heavenly Tao to strike the thunder fire into such a ghastly state? So many bolts of lightning and fire came down, but it didn't strike the main character and only struck them, the idle people present. "Hey, big brother, wake up. You struck the wrong person." On the other side, after Arbor successfully advanced, he waited and waited, but the 5 spirits' reincarnation tribulation didn't come. Chapter 38-33. On the other hand, Mo Lien, Duan Yu, and the others outside all felt miserable. Instead of their Charles, they were met with a bunch of inexplicable lightning and fire. These lightning and fire didn't have eyes and directly struck them. They treated them the same way they treated Gui Xuan, Lin Zhener, and the others at the same time. The shrubbery around them suddenly rustled. Suddenly, a bunch of strangers holding swords and sabers pounced out from all directions, shouting at them. When the leading elderly saw Mo Lien and the others surrounding them, it was obvious that they deliberately came to disturb the Saintess's cultivation. His eyes instantly turned red from anger. "You bunch of rascals." The Phoenix tribe's head consecrator raised his hand and pointed at Mu Xingqian and the others as he cursed, "Surround them all. You bunch of rascals dare to disturb our Saintess's advancement. Kill without mercy." Hey, uncle, what's up with you? Why did you suddenly pop out of a grass nest and want to make an example out of them without any explanation? Who was the Saintess? Speak clearly, hey. Mo Lien and the others looked at each other, bewildered. Who exactly were these people who suddenly popped out? Why did they surround them for no reason? They wanted to kill and chop at the slightest provocation. Were they crazy? Sir, speak properly if you have something to say. Duanyu glanced at the fuming Phoenix Tribe's head consecrator and inexplicably felt that the bunch of people in front of them seemed to be, perhaps related to Jojo. He glanced at Mo Lien from the corner of his eyes. Prince Mo was baffled and directly replied, I don't know her. What saintess or not, how would he know? Moreover, at the mention of the saintess, Prince Mo would think of that loathsome saintess of the Sun-Moon Temple, Nia Yaoguang, just like Jojo. Nia Yaoguang was courting death and harming people on the Duchun River. Later on, she heard the news and escaped. They had never been able to catch her. Nobody knew if she had retreated back to the nest of the Tianyun family. Just thinking about it made them feel suffocated. Meanwhile, the Feng clan's head consecrator raised her hand and ordered Feng Chongqing to lead his men to surround Mo Lien, Duanyu, Mu Xingchen, and the others. Over 2,000 deity realm experts came out in full force. Everyone had a dumbfounded look on their faces. All right. What kind of damned situation was this? They had come to the Phoenix Forest to gain experience, so how did they end up encountering a group of idiots who wanted to chop anyone they saw without any explanation? As the saying goes, enough ants can bite an elephant to death. With so many deity realm powerhouses, even Mo Lien and Duanyu felt a bit of a headache, let alone the two high consecrators and that young man in the lead. It was obvious that their cultivation was at the transcendent god realm. It was a little tiring to resist it head-on. There was no need to create so many powerful enemies for no reason, okay? Besides, Mo Lien and the others were completely at a loss right now. They didn't know why the other party had brought so many clansmen to surround and annihilate them. Mu Xingchen stepped forward and quickly said, Everyone, let's talk nicely. May I know who you are? You don't need to care who we are. That old consecrator fumed with rage as he scolded, You only need to know that you fellows must pay the price for offending our clan saintess. Lin Jinner's shoulder had yet to fully recover from the sword strike, so she staggered forward with a pale face. Sir, you have to be reasonable, right? Lin Jinner endured the pain and said, We simply don't know who your saintess is. How could we possibly disturb her advancement? When she said the word advancement, she suddenly had a flash of inspiration. Chapter 38-34. Lin Jinner's eyes abruptly widened as she shrieked, You're talking about that little bitch? Smack! An empty slap landed on her ghastly pale face, causing her to fall backward as if her bones were falling apart. Dirty your hands. Duanyu coldly swept a glance at Lin Jinner. The Feng clan's head consecrator's furious rebuke was suddenly heard. Seize her. Several Feng clansmen flew up and dragged Lin Jinner out of the crowd like dragging a dead dog. Feng Zhangfei looked at the head consecrator exasperatedly. Why was he as impulsive as a hot-blooded youth at his freaking age? Even if there was a quarrel between two young ladies, you should have let the young ladies resolve it. You, a head consecrator, attacked a woman just because she cursed the holy maiden. Seriously, you're too degrading. Bah, where did this holy maiden come from? He wouldn't admit it. Lin Jinner's complexion was ghastly pale by now. On the side, Mu Xiaoxue swayed like a willow leaf in the wind. She walked up a few steps and forcefully tugged at Lin Jinner's arm. She looked at the Feng clansman mournfully and sweetly begged for mercy, Don't capture Senior Sister Lin. Senior Sister Lin is just outspoken and doesn't have any ill intentions. The Feng clansman who captured Lin Jinner expressionlessly glanced at Mu Xiaoxue. One of them suddenly jerked his arm and flung Mu Xiaoxue, who had no cultivation at all, away. Seeing that the delicate Mu Xiaoxue was about to crash into the wooden pillar next to her, her two senior brothers, her flower protectors, quickly leaped out and supported Mu Xiaoxue like guardian deities, gently comforting the weeping little princess. Little junior sister, don't cry. Don't worry, little junior sister. Junior sister Lin will be fine. Hey, you guys are too much. In order to make his presence known in front of Mu Xiaoxue, Gu Yishuan also stepped forward with a sullen face. He stood in front of Mu Xiaoxue and her senior brother and coldly gazed at those Feng clansmen. Who exactly are you people? Queen Fu Sha couldn't resist interjecting. Gu Yishuan once again interrupted Queen Fu Sha's words and straightened his back. Capturing people without reason and without question. Don't you think it's too much? Feng Zhangfei blinked. What about it? Gu Yishuan was momentarily stumped by Feng Zhangfei's words. He wanted to be more unyielding, but his kung fu was not up to par. The strength of Feng Zhangfei's group was obviously much higher than his. At this time, it was actually the most appropriate thing to do. We are from the ancient Phoenix clan. As Feng Zhangqing spoke, the entire area fell silent. Everyone stared at Feng Zhangqing and the others as if they were looking at strange objects. Phoenix Clan. The Wind Clan that people had only heard of but never heard of. Mo Lian raised a brow and met Duan Yu's eyes. To be honest, the appearance of the Wind Race people here was both surprising and reasonable. The legends of the ancient Phoenix Clan had always been passed down in Phoenix Grove, but no one had ever encountered them before. This woman is spouting nonsense, slandering our holy maiden. Kill her on the spot. The head consecrator pointed at Lin Jinner, who had been pushed to kneel on the ground. Lin Jinner's pupils immediately shrank. She didn't understand how her cursing of that stoic face had escalated to the level of losing her life. These Wind clansmen were so unreasonable. No, don't. No. Chapter 38-35. Sobbing, Mu Xiaoxue extended a frail hand toward Lin Jinner, and her senior sister Lin reverberated in everyone's hearts. Qi Fa, Chao Yi, and Gu Yishuan couldn't bear to see her like this. Suddenly, they heard a faint sound coming from the tree hole, and a small white robe flashed before everyone's eyes. Subsequently, everyone saw a wisp of long black hair fluttering in the wind. That expressionless little person walked out of the tree hole unruffled and unruffled. At this time, the sky had completely darkened, and the little girl's large almond-shaped eyes glinted with a cold light, appearing exceptionally bright in the night. What blinded everyone's eyes even more was that the little girl's eggshell defensive barrier was reinforced with who knew how many defensive talismans, and the defensive spirit artifacts all over her body were shining brightly. People couldn't help but want to laugh at her. So this was how ballers advanced to the divine realm, speaking of which, it really was very strange. Sir Jojo had already successfully advanced an hour ago. Afterward, she waited inside the tree hole for a long time, but not a single bolt of lightning came. She only heard the noise outside the tree hole getting louder and louder. At first, she couldn't be bothered to pay attention to it. But the more she listened, the more familiar voices sounded. Duan Yu's, Big Brothers. Ma Ta's, Lien's. They were all here. But what was up with the 5 spirits' reincarnation tribulation? Why wasn't it coming? If it wasn't coming, did that mean it wouldn't come in the future, or would it still come in 2 days? This was completely unreliable, all right. Sir Jojo had activated all his defensive spirit artifacts and even used so many defensive talismans, so he had all kinds of defenses on his body. It wasn't coming. Then what if it came when Sir Jojo was unguarded? Who could she reason with? When Duan Yu and the others saw the little fellow, they felt that this little cutie was very comical. Those who knew her well understood this expression all too well. Don't be fooled by her expressionless face all day long. It was also divided into different levels. First level expressionless face, second level expressionless face. Now that this fellow had a 9th level expressionless face, it meant that she was having a mental breakdown. If the little crown princess had a mental breakdown, would she say it? She wouldn't, all right. With her temperament of wanting to save face, humph, there was no way she would say it. Saintess. The two consecrators' eyes were brimming with tears. Thank goodness the Saintess is all right. Duan Yu expressionlessly glanced at Mo Lien and discovered that the latter was also expressionlessly looking at Charles. That's right. Who would have thought that after being separated for just a few days, their Charles would inexplicably hook up with a group of people from the Phoenix clan and foolishly be dragged away by others to become the Holy Maiden? He really couldn't miss a single glance. The two of them sighed inwardly. Arbor looked up at the sky. Thus, all the phoenixes raised their heads to look at the sky. What instructions did the Saintess have? The two consecrators excitedly expressed that the Saintess was not an ordinary person. She must have discovered something. The reason why the Foam clansmen had stayed in Phoenix Forest for so long was because they wanted to live in seclusion. Secondly, they simply couldn't leave Phoenix Forest. The Saintess had discovered the enchantment? The Saintess must be able to open this barrier. Come. Arbor raised a soft little finger and beckoned to the sky. What did the Saintess mean by come when she suddenly pointed at the sky? Mu Xingchen's mouth twitched, and he pulled Mo Lien back 2 steps. Duan Yu, Mata, and Omega Kotoku's group all retreated in unison as though they sensed something. Wait for me, I'm not done updating today. Chapter 38-36. An enraged ice tornado rushed down from the sky, as if the Milky Way was flowing in reverse and surging against the current. A gust of chilly air directly assaulted their faces. Everyone immediately cried out, "Mother," and one by one, they hurriedly crawled backward. However, how could they make it in time? That ice tornado landed on Chi Fa, who couldn't crawl in time, and instantly froze him inside. Countless ice tornadoes descended from the sky, crushing a perfectly fine man into powder in a matter of minutes as if they were demonic creatures capable of destroying dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. Everyone was shocked, all right. This was the water spirit tribulation of the 5 spirits reincarnation tribulation, right? But the problem was you freaking, did you sweep the wrong person, Everyone wished for nothing more than to kneel down to Heavenly Law right now. No, bro, you're Heavenly Law, you're big bro, but you can't mess around. Those 2 thunderbolts just now were because you were blind and didn't see the passers-by clearly. Everyone didn't blame you after the incident passed, but what was going on now? The little girl told you to come, and you freaking came at a moment's notice. Mo Lien secretly suppressed the smile at the corner of her mouth. Probably only she, Duan Yu, Mu Xingchen, and a few others present understood. The little fellow didn't make the ice tornadoes come down to smash others at all. She made the 5 spirits reincarnation tribulation come to smash her so that she could quickly transcend this 5 spirits reincarnation tribulation. It was that simple. Senior brother Qi. Mu Xiaoxue screamed miserably, and her head tilted to the side as she fainted in Gu Yishuan's arms. Gu Yishuan's heart surged as he hugged the delicate Mu Xiaoxue. He turned to glare at Arbor, his eyes wishing for nothing more than to spit out raging flames. Crown Princess. You've gone too far. What have I gone too far? Sir Jojo glared furiously at Gu Yishuan. It's you bunch of bystanders who gathered here to mess around. Otherwise, how could Heavenly Law be blind and not strike me but you guys? Come. Jojo roared at the sky. Boom. Come. Come, come. Boom, boom, boom. Everyone, the 5 spirits reincarnation tribulation was really complete this time. Previously, there had been lightning and fire. Now, there were ice tornadoes, earth tornadoes, and wood spirit arrows. All of them descended from the sky. When other people go through the 5 spirits reincarnation tribulation, at most there will be a lightning fire tribulation. That is already considered to have angered the heavenly Tao. This guy was different from others. This fella's reincarnation tribulation of the 5 spirits was truly a true reincarnation tribulation of the 5 spirits. Every single heaven and earth origin spirit was given to him once. This couldn't be any better, okay? The problem was that when others transcended their tribulations, they were all transcending life and death tribulations. Not to mention the great tribulation of lightning and fire, just the 9 heavenly lightning tribulations were enough to kill a person, making it impossible for them to regenerate. But this guy was different. Not a single one of the 5 spirits' reincarnation tribulations had landed on her. They had all been endured by others. Most importantly, she kept pointing at the sky and saying, "Come, come, come. Come my ass. Don't come, okay?" Mu Xingqian also dodged 2 heavenly lightning bolts in a row. He glanced at Mo Lian with a wry smile. The meaning in his eyes couldn't be more obvious. Hurry up and stop your wife. Is your wife crazy? This 5 spirits reincarnation tribulation was really amusing. Every time, it didn't hurt the main character but implicated the fish in the moat. Even an idiot should know by now. How was the heavenly Tao blind? That was simply brain damaged, okay? The onlookers were on the verge of a mental breakdown. Chapter 38-37. Jojo, don't come! Mata couldn't resist shrieking as he somersaulted to dodge a wooden arrow falling from the sky. Wiping the cold sweat from his forehead, he hastily said, "Jojo, hurry and let your relatives go back. Please don't make a fuss." He was about to die, not to mention Queen Fu Sha, Wang Kuang, and the others, whose spiritual energy had already been depleted. They were all bitterly holding on right now. Who knew if they would be killed by the 5 spirit essences left behind by Heavenly Tao in the next second? Arbor couldn't help but frown when she heard the clamor of the crowd. She raised her finger, and the dozen or so JoJo's phantoms sitting motionlessly around her immediately moved, pouncing to protect Mata, Mu Xingqian, and the others. It was truly infuriating. Heavenly Tao didn't even strike Sir JoJo's phantoms. It blindly struck several times in Wang Kuang, Lin Jinner, and the others' direction. Wang Kuang was about to cry. If he had known that there was such a trap in this world, he wouldn't have come here to court death with the intention of killing people and seizing their treasures. What should he do now? When Arbor saw countless bolts of lightning and fire flying toward Mo Lian, Duan Yu, and the others, she frowned and dashed to their side. The bolts of lightning and fire instantly turned and charged toward Wang Kuang's group as if venting their anger. Ah! The thin youth named Bean was instantly shattered by the bolts of lightning and fire. He was utterly baffled and had no idea how he died. "Hurry and get away from that witch, get away from her!" Lin Jinner screamed, as if she had discovered something. She ran desperately into the forest, stumbling and stumbling. Due to the 5 spirits' sudden attack earlier, the Feng clansmen were protecting Feng Chongqing and Duan Yu, so how could they care about Lin Jinner's life or death? Instead, she took the opportunity to escape. Mo Lian twitched his mouth and took the opportunity to grab his wife. "Jojo." Qiao Muth patted his chest and asked in bewilderment, "What should I do? Won't this 5 spirits reincarnation tribulation elder come down? Will it come find trouble with me the next day? Duan Yu, is this why you keep calling it, come, come, come? Forget it." Ollie, who was standing at the side, snapped at her, "Can't you see that the Heavenly Tao doesn't want to strike you at all? Let's not beat around the bush. You're deliberately staying here to lure the Heavenly Tao to strike us, right?" Arbor cast a sideways glance at that guy and couldn't be bothered with him. With a nervous expression, he continued to ask Mo Lian, "So am I considered to have passed the 5 spirits reincarnation tribulation or not?" Was there a need to ask? If you transcend the tribulation, you're just chopping the melon-eating masses. Once you're done transcending, alright. Mo Lien held back her laughter and nodded. It should be done. Are you trying to laugh? Jojo puffed up his cheeks in displeasure. His expression seemed to say, don't you dare laugh. No. I don't feel like laughing at all. Mo Lien quickly shook her head. What's so funny about that? Everyone also passes the 5 spirits reincarnation tribulation, so there's nothing strange about it, right, Jojo? Duan Yu rolled his eyes at his lack of integrity. Arbor nodded. Since that's the case, then forget it. She looked up in distress, and Ollie quickly shouted at her, don't come. Everyone, no, don't you guys feel that the sky is so dark and dense with nebulae, as if it's about to explode? Chapter 38. Yao Hong pinched his fingers and gulped. He raised his hand and pointed at the sky with a terrified voice. Everyone felt a headache when they saw her pointing at the sky following Yao Hong's line of sight. Everyone was shocked. Yao Hong was right this time. The sky was densely covered by thousands of nebulas, forming a flowing galaxy. It looked like it could explode at any moment. What is this? Wang Kuang was terrified. On the other hand, Mo Lien and the others were quite astounded. This? Why was the power of the star domain suddenly overflowing? The strongest power in the world, star power, was also called holy power by them. Could it be that the 3 states were suddenly filled with holy power for Jojo? Arbor looked at the origin power of heaven and earth roiling in the nebulas and expressionlessly turned to say to Mo Lien, Duan Yu, and the others, you guys stay here and absorb. I'll take the 5 spirits and leave this place. Let's meet at the southern entrance of Phoenix Grove later. If you see Duanmu and the others, help me tell them that our team has earned enough points. Tell them they don't have to work anymore. After saying this, Lady Jojo patted her husband to comfort him. Then, she quickly turned around and dashed toward the depths of the forest. Everyone, could this weirdo be any weirder? Sure enough, as soon as she moved, the 5-colored origin power in the sky ran away with her. Seeing this, Wang Kuang, Xiao Yi, and the others wanted nothing more than to curse. She should have fucking scrammed a long time ago, alright. That 5 spirits reincarnation tribulation was probably sick in the head. It originally came for the stoic face, but it only hovered in the air and started to go blind when it slashed down. Let's go. This area was enveloped by star power. Everyone below the transcendent realm felt the terrifying suppression of the expansion of their bloodlines. It was as if they would be crushed to the point that their bones would crack if they stayed here for another minute. They couldn't stay here any longer. Wang Kuang and the others looked at each other and scrambled to their feet. Like stray dogs, they sprinted toward the entrance of Phoenix Grove, in the opposite direction of Arbor. Now, no one dared to run in the same direction as Lady Jojo. After knowing her ability to summon lightning and fire at any time, no one was willing to follow this girl. You can go wherever you want to go. Don't appear in front of us and continue to harm us. What a peerless weirdo. There was probably no one else like her in the entire 3 prefectures. Gu Yishuan hugged the fainted Mu Xiaoxue tightly and ran with the team towards the entrance of the forest. However, the more he ran, the more pain he felt from his ankle. It was as if every step he took was like stepping on a needle. It was so painful that he felt a little despair. He took a moment to look down. The originally pitch-black fingerprints had become even darker in color. The skin around the fingerprints even showed signs of ulceration. Why did it turn out like this? Gu Yishuan's heart slowly began to panic. His ankle had been grabbed by the skeletons in the formation. Could it be that he had been poisoned? He didn't dare to think about it any further. He hugged Mu Xiaoxue and kept a distance from the others. Now, because of his ankle injury, his running speed was getting slower and slower. Zhao Yi caught up with him and sneered. He raised his hand to hug Mu Xiaoxue. No need to trouble this young master. I'll carry junior sister. This brat harbored unfathomable intentions and even wanted to climb up the social ladder recklessly. Dream on. Chapter 38-39. His hands were empty as Mu Xiaoxue was snatched away from him. Anger flashed through Gui Xuan's eyes. However, the sharp pain in his ankle made him powerless to fight with Zhao Yi for anything. The fact that Zhao Yi was able to carry Mu Xiaoxue away, to a certain extent, had lightened his burden. Let's go, let's go. Many mercenary teams scuttled out of the forest. Taking advantage of the first glimmer of dawn, they followed the large group and rushed out of Phoenix Wood Forest. Behind them, a large nebula covered the entire sky. The sky was supposed to be slightly bright, but at this moment, it was still dark because of the dense nebula. Only an occasional ray of light seeped out from the star power, appearing very weak and small. Mo Lian, Duan Yu, and the others quickly meditated and closed their eyes to enter a state of cultivation. Meanwhile, Mu Xingchen and the other members of the Phoenix clan retreated out of the dense star power range. They looked up at the sky and couldn't help but click their tongues in wonder. Jojo was truly a peerless oddball. Everywhere he went, all kinds of things started to become abnormal. So many strange things actually happened when he was just advancing a cultivation level. It had to be said that this fellow was a miracle in and of itself. Sir Jojo, who was being talked about by everyone, headed deeper into the forest. If someone was here right now, they would definitely discover that this oddball was indignantly glowing with a five-colored cloud above his head. Thunder and fire crackled, but they didn't descend for a long time. Arbor ran to a secluded area before stopping to catch his breath. He looked up at the cloud that was emitting sparks in the sky and felt inexplicably angry. Come down, the little fellow shouted angrily. If you don't come down, then don't freaking ever come back. Why don't you hurry up and come down, alright? You look like you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. It makes people feel very uncomfortable. Fuck, if you stick your head out, you'll be stabbed. She would rather be straightforward. When everyone broke through to the god realm, they all underwent this five spirits reincarnation tribulation. There was no reason that she couldn't, right? Moreover, it wasn't like she was lazy and didn't want to undergo it. She had already called out, "Come down," countless times, but this fellow just kept tossing and turning without any other reaction. What a crafty person! The origin of five-colored spiritual power rolled and trembled in the air angrily for a while. Not long after, it left Arbor and left, twitching. Why did he run away? Mr. Jojo instantly felt a little uncomfortable. She chased after the origins of the five-color spiritual power, following it for 2 miles, shouting at it, "Come back! Come back! Come back!" Return. The latter didn't even bother to pay attention to this guy. Leaving behind a few long afterimages of spiritual energy, he immediately left with his tail between his legs. If this source of spiritual power could transform into a human form, it would definitely have a pained expression on its face. Was this guy sick in the head? He had already stopped striking her, but she couldn't stop for a moment. She even chased him for 2 miles. She really was a peerless weirdo. Xiao Mumu's small face was expressionless as she stopped walking. She could tell that the heavenly Tao was sick. Wasn't he just here to tease her? After teasing her, she left. Not a single strand of the 5 spirit origins landed on her body. The 5 spirits reincarnation tribulation was over just like that. If it was over, then it was over. Xiao Mu's small face was taut as she walked out of Phoenix Grove. She had arranged to meet Jojo's lotus at the southern entrance of the forest. Now it was time to rush over and meet up with them. The sound of the wind. Chapter 3840. Arbor quickly turned around, and in an instant, she saw a thorn-like earth blade emerge from the ground. In the blink of an eye, the earth and stone beside her feet were cut into two and suddenly exploded. Arbor coldly looked back and saw a sneaky black shadow trying to retreat into the forest. The wood's spiritual power quickly slid around her wrist, forming a long vine that suddenly hooked the other party's ankle and pulled fiercely. The black shadow followed this tyrannical force and was immediately pulled out of the grass nest by Arbor. He fell heavily to the ground and let out a muffled groan. Xiaomu didn't even spare that person a second glance as she tossed a god energy ball over with a flick of her hand. Since there was a simple and fast way to deal with others, Arbor was too lazy to do it herself. The divine power ball suddenly bombarded the other party's body, and a huge force heavily pushed him out and he fell heavily to the ground. Cough, cough, cough. The black mask on the guy's face fell, revealing an extremely ordinary-looking face. Arbor glanced at him and then looked away. She didn't seem to have seen this person before. She didn't know where this clown came from, but he just had to stay here and make trouble with her. Just now, it was this person who scattered the illusion she left in the tree hole, right? Since he wanted to take her life, she naturally wouldn't let him go so easily. Thinking of this, Arbor had 2 more divine power balls in her hands. Before she threw them out, she suddenly saw the man's feet fiercely stomp on the ground, and like a fierce tiger, he pounced in her direction. He actually had the tendency to fight with his life. Arbor's lips curved into a sneer. She held the 2 divine power balls in her hands and threw them in the other party's direction without hesitation. At the same time, she jumped up, stepped on the void, and nimbly flipped over. She stepped on a swaying branch and coldly looked over. After hearing 2 loud rumbling sounds, the surrounding trees were all flattened by the divine power balls. A circular depression appeared in the middle of the ground. The man fell into the depression and spat out mouthfuls of blood, trying his best to climb up from the bottom. The little lady is quite vicious and merciless. A cold voice abruptly appeared behind Xiaomu. Arbor wasn't frightened by the newcomer. He turned his head to look at the newcomer with a cold expression. His eyes were filled with coldness, and there was not the slightest hint of joy, anger, sorrow, or joy. 3 people stood behind him. It was an old man in his 80s with a short beard. He was the one who spoke, and his triangular eyes looked at her calmly. 2 slightly younger men in their 50s were currently staring at her hand with strange expressions. Just now, this young lady threw out 2 divine power balls. She was really generous. Unfortunately, he was about to die. Do you have any last words? An old man in his 50s asked coldly with his hands behind his back. The black shadow man, who had finally crawled out of the pit, raised his head at this time. His pair of narrowed eyes revealed a little bit of hatred. Why are you still talking nonsense with her? Hurry up and kill this woman. This young lady was very strange. According to his understanding of this young lady, he guessed that she might have more than 2 or 3 divine power balls in her hands. He waited with great difficulty until this young lady was alone and released a signal to them. He didn't want to mess things up again. Who are you people? Arbor curiously glanced at the 3 old men. These 3 old men didn't look young. Chapter 3841. She opened her divine eye and scanned the area, but did not see anything strange in the heads of these 3 old men. If it was not Tianyun's men, then who could it be? It was obvious that she didn't recognize the man lying in the pit. Naturally, she did not know when she had offended him. But it did not matter. Since they came looking for trouble, then she would take care of the trouble as well, and there would be no more trouble. Arbor's gaze turned cold. A pair of pitch-black eyes, containing a cold light of nirvana, locked onto the black figure in the pit. Looks like you all want to die. Her figure moved, and in an instant, she pounced down from the treetops. Her slender figure turned in a circle in midair, and was suddenly blocked by the old man in his 50s. The old man held a hook in each hand, and fiercely hooked it towards her head. Clang! Arbor did not dodge at all, and directly let the hook fall on her defensive barrier. The old man's fingers trembled slightly from the rebound force of the barrier. His eyes instantly narrowed, and a glimmer of light flashed through his eyes. He shouted, "Damn girl, you came at the right time." His hands clasped together, and with one free hand, he clapped his palms towards her chest. At the same time, the other two old men did not stay idle. At this time, their figures also moved, and like a gust of wind sweeping away fallen leaves, one of them kicked towards Arbor's calf. That kick was swift and fierce, as if it was going to break Arbor's calf. The other person silently flashed behind Arbor, and summoned a black broadsword from his consciousness. Aiming at the back of Arbor's head, he chopped it down. A three-sided attack, each move wanting to take her life. In the blink of an eye, Arbor's figure was surrounded from three sides, and disappeared. When she reappeared, she had already retreated 10 meters away, and came to the side of the black figure who had crawled out of the pit. Boom! The three pincer attacks simultaneously fell on the place where Arbor had left, and the surrounding soil was instantly blasted into a scorched wasteland. The old man's pupils constricted. Yet at this moment, Xiaomu had already grasped the shadowy man's throat and coldly asked, "Who exactly are you?" The man narrowed his long and dark eyes and spat out a few words with great effort, You will never know awe." A terrifying divine sense suddenly pierced into the depths of his consciousness. The black shadow man felt a dull pain in his head and immediately wanted to cry out. However, Arbor did not give him much room to fight back. Ever since she advanced to the deity realm, she could already search souls on her own. She was too lazy to talk nonsense with the person in front of her. She searched for useful information on her own. Only then did she realize that the man in front of her was someone she knew. She had never met him before, but she had definitely heard of his name. In the Aurora Sandland, Miss Jing Minyao of the Panga clan had sent this man to the Yu family of the Shuntian prefecture to collude with Yu Batian and assassinate her in the underground arena of Qianluo. Yu Hui, whom Arbor had met in Qianluo's underground fighting arena, was actually guided by this person. This person's name was Brother Go, and she was also familiar with it. He was a good dog by Jing Minyao's side. She did not expect that Brother Go would still want to seek revenge after Jing Minyao had been dead for so long. He even chose such a time when she was alone. As for the three old men, to put it bluntly, Brother Go had issued a kill order in the black market and summoned 3 killers. Brother Go's reward was 1/10 of the underground treasures of the Panga clan. Chapter 38-42. Everyone knew that the family of the former leader of the Panga clan had been annihilated. However, it was said that the treasures that the former leader had left behind were forever buried under the yellow sand. Nowadays, many people were still going to the former base of the Panga clan to search for treasures. They were still dreaming of digging out the treasures and making a fortune. No one knew that the treasures of the former leader of the Jing clan had already been taken away by Mr. Jojo in a talisman. The surviving members of the Panga clan, under the leadership of the new leader, had already gone far away to live their good lives. They wouldn't say a word. Therefore, Brother Guzzi didn't know the truth. He even went back and searched for several days, but he still couldn't find the residence of the Panga clan members. However, he couldn't accept it. His beautiful and proud little princess, who could have become the high and mighty crown princess of the divine land, was killed by Arbor just like that. Brother Guzi wanted to avenge his beautiful princess, Jing Minyao. However, he felt that he wasn't strong enough. After thinking hard, he thought of going to the underground black market of Jiwei City and issuing such an order. The underground black market of Jiwei City was independent of the 3 provinces. Although it wasn't as superior as the 4 major cities, it was protected by the City of Shadows. It had always been a place where crooks mixed with honest folk and wasn't controlled by the 3 provinces. He went there to issue a mission and issued a bounty. Most of the people there were fugitives who had fled to this place to accept his mission. He only had one purpose, which was to kill Arbor. He had to let this woman know that she couldn't escape from the punishment of others after killing Miss Jing. At this point, Xiao Mu already understood this person's thoughts very well. After tossing Brother Go, who was foaming at the mouth and twitching non-stop, onto the ground, Xiao Mu didn't even look at him. She directly summoned a dagger from her conscience and slit Brother Go's neck. Brother Guzi didn't even have time to open his eyes before he died on the spot. Perhaps he couldn't figure out what had gone wrong even at the moment of his death. Why didn't the little girl say a word to him? Why didn't she ask him anything? Why did she search his soul and slit his neck so quickly? Looking at the other party's expressionless paralyzed face, a faint chill rose from the hearts of the 3 elders. The little girl was too cold. Now that the person who issued the mission was dead, did that mean that the mission was already over? If they wanted to continue, even if they completed the mission, no one would be able to lead them to the treasure trove. Damn it! When the 3 old men thought of this, they all sighed in their hearts, and their hearts were filled with grief. How could such a fat piece of meat fly away just like that? The old man said with a sullen face, "The grudge has already been formed. Even if we let this girl go today, she won't let us go." With this young lady's ruthlessness and vengeance, not only would she not let them off, she would definitely beat them to death, right? This girl definitely has more than one god power ball on her. Lock her down. The old man in his 80s shouted. The 3 of them attacked at the same time, using their divine senses of varying heights to lock onto Arbor in a small area. Even if Arbor wanted to use the teleportation talisman now, it would be useless. After all, her consciousness was locked down. Even if she moved, they would immediately find her through the trajectory of her movements. Among the 3 old men, 2 of them were level 10 Divine Realm cultivators. Chapter 38-43. The old man in his 80s was actually an early-stage spiritual venerable realm cultivator. When he pressed down with his hand, Arbor inexplicably felt a trace of suffocation. Good heavens, as expected of someone who had stepped into the transcendent god realm. His aura was far from what an ordinary person could compare to. If it were someone else like Arbor, who had just stepped into the transcendent god realm, they definitely wouldn't be a match for these 3 old men. But who was Arbor? Although she couldn't fight the 3 old men in front of her at the same time, it was more than enough for her to escape from their hands. The 3 of them were fantasizing about locking her conscious. Did they really think that her conscious was only 50 to 60% of her spiritual energy like an ordinary person's? Arbor reached out to summon the 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron from her conscious and slammed it toward one of the old men in his 60s without saying a word. The other party was shocked, completely not expecting this little stoic to have such a strange move. In the blink of an eye, the 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron had already flown in front of the old man. The old man hurriedly reached out to press down, wanting to support the large cauldron that was flying over. He thought that this large cauldron was just a bit heavier than ordinary cauldrons. Unexpectedly, he was sent flying in the next second, and his back hit a tree trunk hard. The old man couldn't hold back for a moment and spat out a mouthful of blood. Arbor calmly glanced at the other party, and a holy power ball flew out from her inner world and immediately smashed toward the old man. "Huh, did you think this great aunt didn't have a backup plan?" Boom! After the dense holy power light exploded, all the people meditating and cultivating under the nebula instantly opened their eyes. Mo Lien abruptly stood up, and her fierce phoenix eyes looked up in the direction of the sound. Jojo was in danger. Arbor threw down a holy power ball and immediately ran away without looking back. The moment the holy power ball exploded, it blasted one of the old men in his 60s into pieces. At the same time, Arbor swiftly stuck several flying talismans on her body. After running a few steps, she instantly soared into the air and flew toward the depths of the forest. Damn it! The elder in his 80s was truly infuriated by the little stoic. He raised his head and swallowed a pill before chasing after her. His only remaining companion couldn't help but call out in a trembling voice, "Brother Gao, stop chasing." How could Gao Dong listen to his words? At this moment, his heart was filled with anger. He was actually tricked by a brat who had just entered the deity realm. Do you think you're so great just because you have the God Power Ball and the Holy Power Ball? He wanted to see just how many holy power orbs this little brat had on her that she could throw around like this. The other old man in his 60s was shocked. After this, Brother Gao took a pill, the aura on his body rose steadily. Now, it had reached a level that he could not recognize. Late-stage spiritual elder realm. Immortal venerable realm. Or was he a late-stage immortal venerable? He did not know, but he could feel the aura on Gao Dong's body rising bit by bit, as if the saint energy had skyrocketed, and could no longer control the rising rhythm. At this moment, Gao Dong's eyes also revealed a hint of carefreeness. This feeling of his cultivation realm soaring was truly too tempting. If he had known earlier, he would have asked that person for 2 more of these pills. At this moment, Arbor suddenly turned around and glanced at him with a focused gaze. The pill that person took had an overwhelming stench unique to Tianyun. Could it be that Tianyun's forces had already infiltrated Jiuwei City's underground black market? Chapter 3844. Or could it be that Tianyun had already started plotting to place some sugar-coated pills with ulterior motives in the underground black market and began to wantonly trade them? Arbor coldly turned to glance at that person. This person's aura was continuously rising. With her current cultivation, it was still too difficult for her to deal with a venerated immortal. Unless Arbor flung out 3 teleportation talismans, but no matter where she teleported to, Gao Dong's divine consciousness would lock onto her. Wherever she teleported, Gao Dong would immediately change directions and catch up to her. Seeing that the distance between them was shrinking closer and closer, Arbor expressionlessly lowered her head to glance at her palm. She abruptly tossed out that sage-grade golden talisman summoning talisman. An angry roar came from the void. It sounded like a dragon but wasn't a dragon, like a beast but wasn't a beast. A cloud of mist spread out behind Arbor in a few breaths' time. A sharp claw stretched out from within and abruptly tore that 60-year-old old man, who couldn't stop in time and was charging over with a face full of terror, into pieces. Gao Dong helplessly watched as one of his companions was torn apart by that thing inside the mist. His expression immediately darkened, and a furious glint condensed in his eyes. He didn't expect that the bounty order for this trip would actually cost the lives of 2 of his old brothers. If this could be tolerated, what couldn't? Today, this little girl had simply crossed his bottom line as a person. She was bound to lose her life here, no matter what tricks she could pull off. Gao Dong instantly flew up and evaded the primordial beast from afar. Although he didn't know what was inside the mist, he could tell that he was no match for the ferocious beast even though he had already reached the peak of the immortal venerable realm, judging from the way it tore his old friend apart with its claws. However, even if he couldn't provoke it, couldn't he avoid it? As long as he circled around that primordial beast with extreme speed and charged directly behind it, that would do. No matter how fast the little stoic was, could she be faster than him, a peak venerated immortal? Today, he wanted this stoic face to die without a doubt. The instant he brushed past her, Gao Dong desperately suppressed his churning qi and blood at the risk of being suppressed by that beast's roar. He flew several steps into the air and chased after the stoic face. As soon as Xiao Mu sensed that heavy pressure assaulting her, she had already activated all the spiritual weapons in her body without any room for objection. Her opponent's palm, which was accompanied by flames, suddenly pushed her back. The little girl was sent flying a few meters away by the force of the blow. Blood trickled down from the corner of her mouth. His eyes were filled with cold mist as he lowered his head to look at the few drops of blood on the ground. Her bright eyes stirred slightly as she chanted several hand seals, and a few talisman seals appeared on her body. The tip of a sword slowly emerged from her left hand. With just a trace of it, a majestic and mighty force swept over, instantly pressing down on Gao Dong, who wanted to fly forward. His footsteps tilted slightly, and his body seemed to be pressed down heavily. Xiao Mu's eyes flickered with an abnormal luster. She gazed at the sword in her hand that was emerging piece by piece, and her heart was filled with a deep sense of satisfaction. "Come out, my friend, come out, come out. Kill this bastard who dared to hurt me. Send him to hell. Little treasure." A familiar voice caused Arbor, who was in the middle of drawing her sword, to stiffen. "How dare you, old thief!" A stern shout accompanied by a projection suddenly appeared above the entire Phoenix Grove. Chapter 38-45. At the same time, Mo Lien, Duan Yu, and the others, who were sprinting toward Arbor, seemed to be enveloped by a heavy pressure at the same time. Their footsteps were so heavy that they could barely lift them up. Mu Xingchen had no choice but to halt his steps and look up at the sky in astonishment. He saw an apparition that blotted out the sky above Phoenix Grove. A heavy pressure swept over, causing everyone in Phoenix Grove to fall to the ground uncontrollably, unable to move at all. Time seemed to come to a standstill, and everyone inexplicably held their breaths. For a moment, the entire Phoenix Grove was so quiet that only the faint sound of the wind could be heard. Even the chirping of birds and cicadas instantly ceased. Arbor's small hand that was pulling out the Fushi greatsword trembled slightly, and a trace of guilt inexplicably flitted across her heart. Strange, why was it that every time she wanted to pull out the sword to play with it, she would summon Master, who was far away in the alternate dimension, over? The little fellow blinked with an obedient expression and quickly stopped pulling out the sword. She retracted her small hand into her sleeve and looked up at the apparition pressing down on Phoenix Grove. At this time, Gao Dong, who bore the brunt of the pressure and was paralyzed on the ground, couldn't make a sound at all. Even breathing felt abnormally extravagant and extremely difficult for him. Arbor squatted beside this big shot who ascended to the venerable immortal realm after taking the medicine. She placed her small hands on her knees with an obedient expression. Xian Huang's apparition descended from the sky and was enveloped by a layer of faint black mist, but that graceful figure and extremely beautiful appearance could still be clearly distinguished. Our dear Xiao Mu was very obedient. She had an instinctive premonition that if she didn't behave obediently in front of Master, she might be out of luck later. Xian Huang curled her lips, and the indistinct black figure appeared in front of the little girl. She raised her hand and patted her head. "Xiao Bao, don't you remember what I told you? Master said before your soul reintegrates, you must remember not to use this Fushi greatsword." The little crown princess nodded her small head repeatedly. Unexpectedly, Xian Huang flicked her forehead, and she instantly reached out to cover her small head. Her round eyes moved. "Your soul exploded before, and your soul fragments were split into 5 different places. Xian Huang paused and lowered her head to look at her little disciple. Although I've taken back one of them, there are still 4 strands of soul remembrance that you need to take back. Arbor nodded in understanding. I can sense that there are 2 parts of your soul in this forest. 2. Arbor's eyes suddenly lit up, and his little ears couldn't help twitching. Did this mean that there were 2 fragments of her soul in the Phoenix Wood Forest? He didn't know where it was or how to find it. Xian Huang saw that the little fellow was puzzled, so she helplessly raised her hand and touched her head. You can feel it, Xiao Bao. As long as you calm down and use your divine sense to sense it, you will definitely be able to sense its location. This child probably had a knot in his heart about his own soul explosion, so he had never truly felt the places where her soul had fallen. Perhaps she still subconsciously felt repulsed by those soul wills. Otherwise, if she approached the vicinity of the soul wills, she should have immediately felt it. Arbor obediently replied with an "oh." Clearly, her master had long been used to her way of killing a conversation with just 3 sentences. She nodded indifferently and continued, only after collecting these soul wills, can you use the Fushi Greatsword. Do you remember? Chapter 38-46. Sir Jojo still nodded obediently, indicating that he understood. Xian Huang's eyes rippled with a faint smile. She stretched out a finger and said softly, close your eyes. Qiao Mu obediently closed her eyes, only to feel an icy finger tapping the center of her forehead. A powerful divine will then permeated into her divine sense, alerting all the defensive divine artifacts in her divine sense. The golden talisman jade tome made a long buzzing sound, but it was quickly suppressed by the strong divine thought. Little treasure, this is the essence of the space-time profound that your martial uncle and I have studied for many years. Now, I will pass it to you. You can comprehend it yourself when you are free. You are a child with great fortune. No matter where you go, you must let me and your martial uncle rest assured. Do you understand? Sir Jojo thought to himself, I am very obedient. Of course, I will not let you worry. Arbor opened his eyes and felt that there was a heavy silver ball in his hand. Xian Huang lovingly touched his little disciple's head. There is a part of the space-time power here. Before you comprehend the space-time profound, you can draw a part of it and use it at any time. Protect yourself well, good child. Remember to be obedient. Master, when will you and martial uncle come to see me again? Arbor was anxious and quickly asked. We will meet. Xian Huang sighed softly. Tian Dao, that old thing, is coming. I will go and have a good chat with it. Remember my words, do not rashly use the Fushi sword again. As for him. After saying that, Xian Huang's cold gaze swept over to Gao Dong, who was sitting paralyzed and pretending to be dead. Did he really think that he would not have to die by pretending to be dead? He actually forced her precious disciple to vomit blood and draw the Fushi sword. He really had guts. Old thief Wang Liang, you bullied the younger generation at your age. Death is not to be regretted. Gao Dong's whole body trembled, and he could not help but tremble. He fiercely shrank his body and shouted, Say Senior, spare my life. Say Senior. Spare, a colorless space as thin as a cicada's wing suddenly wrapped around his body. An ice-cold chill inexplicably sprung up from the bottom of Gao Dong's feet, causing him to involuntarily shiver. Arbor turned his head and saw that his master's phantom in the void had already retreated, and the entire Phoenix Grove had returned to its original tranquility. She pouted and felt a little melancholy in her heart. The chirping of birds rang out once again. It was as if the entire world had suddenly come alive. Mo Lien, Duan Yu, and the others hurried to Qiao Mu's side as fast as they could, and they just so happened to see Gao Dong, who was trapped inside a square transparent barrier. His entire body was stiff and upright, and his expression was warped. He was soundlessly crushed into pieces by a strange energy fluctuation, dissipating before them with a bang. Everyone's expression changed. Mata opened his mouth, but he couldn't make a sound. The scene just now was simply too shocking. What kind of power is this? Eldest young Sir Chin also sucked in a cold breath, and his gaze flickered as he looked at Arbor, who was sitting at the side with an obedient expression. Why did he feel that this child was a little too obedient now? The little fellow was sitting right next to the dissipated Gao Dong with her hands on her knees, and her tiny body was ramrod straight. Her expressionless little face carried the sign of facial paralysis. If it were not for the fact that her gaze would occasionally glance at them, everyone would really think that this little thing had entered a meditative state to cultivate again. Chapter 38-47. Cough, cough. Everyone couldn't help but look at her exasperatedly. The little girl was accustomed to using an expressionless face to conceal her mental breakdown. She might be sitting there obediently now, but something big must have happened earlier. She just couldn't be bothered to tell them. Mo Lien quickly walked up and reached out to pull his wife up from the tree. When the little girl saw this, she quickly hopped up from the ground and looked at him calmly. Let's go. Don't you think you should tell everyone what happened just now? Jojo, did a mighty figure pass by here earlier? Chin-jo asked in confusion. No, Arbor replied expressionlessly. Ha! Everyone couldn't resist throwing this word at her. Then who was the projection above Phoenix Grove? Ollie couldn't resist rolling his eyes and also asked, it can't be that all of our eyes are playing tricks on us, right? When that projection's aura pressed down, everyone was pressed to the ground and couldn't walk near you at all. What projection? Arbor glanced at him indifferently with a stoic expression that said, I can't be bothered to talk to you. Mo Lien couldn't resist twitching his mouth. He held his wifey's hand and said while suppressing his laughter, Jojo, let's move together. Sir Jojo immediately pulled her hand out of his and expressionlessly said, we're not on the same team. Pfft, Duan, you couldn't resist laughing out loud. Damn, this little girl was too funny. Looking at her serious expression and Mo Lien's pitiful appearance next to her, pfft, they really couldn't hold back their laughter. Jojo, you're too heartless. My heart hurts when you say this. Mo Lien looked pitiful. The little girl nodded and patted him. You'd better stay away from me. Don't think that you can snatch my identity tablet and ruby just because I'm alone now. If I don't recognize my family, I won't even recognize myself. Everyone, Mu Xingchen was speechless. We won't steal your identity card. Don't worry. We don't want to continue suffering in the future. When they were training in the Phoenix Forest, they were courting death and snatched your things. How are they going to live in the future? It's not like I won't be able to live a good life after I leave, Pui. Arbor looked at them expressionlessly. As long as you understand. She waved her hand and was about to bid farewell to everyone. She still had to enter the forest to continue looking for her companions, Duan Muqing and the others. I don't have time to waste with these people. Mo Lien tugged at her sleeve and looked at her pitifully. Jojo, you said earlier that you would meet up with us after luring the 5 spirits away. Arbor couldn't wait to jump into the pit. Yes, she had just said that it was an instinctive reaction, wasn't it? When she saw Mo Lien and Duan Yu, she instinctively wanted to leave with them. Now that she had sobered up and thought about it, I'm not in the same team as them. Why should I leave? Of course I won't leave with them. Be careful. Arbor waved her small fists and glared menacingly at eldest young Sir Chin's group, whose mouths were twitching. Afterwards, she turned around and broke into a run towards another part of the forest, truly parting ways with Mo Lien and the rest. Chapter 38-48. Duan Yu couldn't resist the urge to burst into laughter. He turned to look at Mo Lien's hopeless expression and gloated, "You can't keep her either." Ha 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 ha. Mo Lien, this fool, also couldn't keep Sir Jojo. What a joke. Omega Kotoku's eyes flickered. When she led her team past Mo Lien's group, she glanced at Mo Lien and sneered. When Mo Lien looked over at him, that troop had already left his side. He was so angry that his teeth hurt and his heart stifled. His head throbbed, and his handsome face turned as black as the bottom of a pot. Mu Xingqian's mouth twitched, and he patted Mo Lien's shoulder sympathetically. Don't worry, Jojo still wants you. It's just that the competition hasn't ended yet, so she simply thinks that we aren't on the same side as her and are all her potential competitors and enemies. Pfft. When he said this, even he couldn't resist laughing. Fuck, he had to think of a way to team up with Jojo in the future. Otherwise, it would be too heart-wrenching. If he didn't team up with the little lady, he would be despised by her all the time. He simply couldn't live like this. Prince Mo was already very regretful, alright, but Mu Xingqian and the others were still making sarcastic remarks beside him. If he had known earlier, he would have stayed in the same team as his little ancestor no matter what. He definitely wouldn't have given up such an important team spot to Qi Xianxian and her group. Duan Yu blinked and consoled with a grin, "Don't worry, even if we don't rob Jojo, we can still rob others." From the looks of it, the 1,700+ teams from the Royal Academy should have all entered the forest. We should act now. Mo Lien looked like she had nothing left to live for and was still immersed in the little lady's disdainful gaze. On the other side, Omega Kotoku's group was silently walking into the forest. The eldest young sir followed beside him and said with a grin, "Second brother, did you notice?" The little girl deliberately changed the topic and didn't want to talk to us about the shadow that appeared in the sky above the Phoenix Forest. A member of the Qin clan added, "I don't know who that person is, but his aura actually enveloped the entire sky above the Phoenix Wood Forest, making people unable to even think of resisting. Also, did you see that? What kind of container was that old man imprisoned in? Shattering into pieces within minutes. Not a vessel." Eldest young Sir Qin shook his head mildly and said with a smile, "It does seem a bit like the power of the void. It's as if I'm trapped in a transparent space and can be crushed into pieces at any moment." Hearing this, everyone was shocked to realize that it was indeed as the eldest young master had said. The old man seemed to have been torn to pieces by the power of space, completely unable to resist. A powerful spatial expert? Qin Jiu exclaimed in a low voice. In the entire 3 continents, he had never heard of anyone who could control the power of space. Even the 3 powers that transcended the 5 spirits completely didn't include the power of space, alright? Although the power of void annihilation achieved the same result as the power of space through different means, its main purpose wasn't to shatter the void but to generate void fire. It was fundamentally different from the power of space. Qin Jiu took a deep breath. If he was saying if that big shot who grasped the power of space was really related to Jojo, then who would dare to provoke this stoic-faced little lady in the entire 3 continents? A Qin estate disciple exhaled lightly. Marvelous. Chapter 38-49. Moreover, Lady Jojo abandoned Mo Lien, Duan Yu, and the others and rushed into Phoenix Forest alone to search for Duanmu Qin, Qi Xianxian, and the others. The more she thought about it, the guiltier she felt. Lady Jojo abandoned hubby just like that. Would hubby cry? But darling's heart was bitter, so she could only hold it in. Mo Lien and the others must have recording talisman matrices around them right now. If she was in the same team as them, according to the mentor's troublesome nature, they would definitely accuse her of cheating at the last minute. How could that do? She was someone who even had the heart of a 10,000-year-old phoenix tree, so she couldn't casually cause any trouble. What was a phoenix flower worth? She even brought the 10,000-year-old phoenix tree back home, so she could have as many flowers as she wanted in the future. When she thought of this, Lady Jojo's mood improved, so she took out the extremely thick silver ball that Master left for her and studied it. She held it in her hand and immersed her divine perception inside. She saw a vast ocean with two streaks of power that resembled the Milky Way slowly rippling inside this small silver ball like ribbons. Arbor's eyes lit up when she absorbed one of the streaks of power. She suddenly disappeared from where she stood, and when she reappeared, she was already in the center of the forest 1.5 kilometers away. This was the space-time power that Master left behind. She said that it was a power that she could use before she comprehended the profundity of space-time. She absorbed less than 1/10,000th of the space-time power that resembled the Milky Way just now. She felt that she could use it continuously for about 6 hours if she stored it in her body. The little fellow's eyes were sparkling, and she also absorbed a small bit of the power of time to test it out. As she waved her small hand, the fluttering leaves in the surroundings suddenly stopped moving. Time froze. Although it only froze for a few seconds before the leaves started falling again, if this happened during a battle, it would suddenly stop moving for several seconds. Ha! Lady Jojo was a bit happy. She then used the power of space that existed in her body to continuously move around Phoenix Forest. Occasionally, she would appear beside a Royal Academy team, and before they could react, she would immediately beat them up with her small fists and snatch their rubies before scampering away. Fuck, everyone was about to explode, alright? Where did this guy come from? Why did he suddenly appear beside you and attack you without saying anything? The funniest thing was that there was an unlucky team that was robbed twice by Sir Jojo. When Sir Jojo appeared beside them for the third time, the captain hurriedly waved his hand and said, Don't fight. You already beat us up half an hour ago. We'll leave the rubies to you. Crown Princess, do you want an identity card? Hand it over, we'll hand over everything. Arbor, why didn't they say so earlier? He made her waste her time. Who wants your identity cards? She just wants to collect points. With a flash of light, the little fellow quickly moved away from them. The unlucky team members all heaved a sigh of relief and sat down on the ground. Anyone who was robbed 3 times in a row would feel hopeless, okay? Hand over the ruby. A group of 7 ran down from a small alley and surrounded them with swords and sabers in their hands. The captain really wanted to cry. What kind of bad luck did their team have? They had an unreliable alchemist, and until now, he still hadn't been able to break the seal on them. Chapter 3850. For the next few days, they had been living in the open in the Phoenix Forest, living a miserable life. After being robbed 4 times in a row, they no longer had any red gemstones to hand over. Sob, sob, sob. He felt that his team was probably the most pitiful among all the teams in the royal school. One of the female students in the team cried out, "Just now, the Crown Princess robbed us 3 times and we've already handed over all our red gemstones. We don't have any red gemstones left, take your identity badges." Following that, a dang-danged sound was heard as the female student threw her identity badges onto the ground. With a hopeless expression, she said, "Let's go back to the school, leader." Sob, sob, sob. It was too torturous. If this carried on, she was going to go crazy. Life without a cultivation base was really hard. She didn't want to be an ordinary person. The life of an ordinary person was really too hard. Little Fatty looked at them with a dumbfounded expression. Chi Xuanchuan's eyes lit up and asked anxiously, "The Crown Princess? You guys really saw the Crown Princess? When, where is she now? Don't listen to their nonsense." Duan Muqing said coldly, "Even if the Crown Princess was here to rob, there's no reason for her to rob them 3 times. The Crown Princess wasn't stupid. Robbing them once and taking away the red gemstones was enough. Robbing them 3 times in a row, what the hell was that?" Leader said with a hopeless expression, "You guys don't have to believe it. The Crown Princess did rob us 3 times. You can look at the recording screen when you go back. The Crown Princess comes and goes without a trace. She mysteriously appeared in front of you and attacked you without saying a word. She didn't even give us a chance to refute." Why did they feel like crying when they thought of this? Little Fatty pursed his lips and looked at them sympathetically. He then exchanged glances with Duanmu and the rest. They guessed that the little Crown Princess, this troublemaker, had used something like a teleportation talisman to hide in the forest and rob the students passing by. Which direction did she go? The captain casually pointed to the south. It was only after Duan Muqing ran off with his teammates that he faintly sighed. Don't hold too much hope. Your Crown Prince Consort is a weirdo. Don't think that she's really waiting for you in the south. The little Crown Princess's figure suddenly flashed, and she stood on a branch of a tree. She happily looked at the remaining spatial energy in her body. After continuously using it for more than 2 hours, she still had at least half of the spatial energy left for her to squander. It was so much fun. The little fellow couldn't help but clap his little hands. Then, he heard a woman's laughter drifting into his ears. "Little big brother, TSK, you look a little too pitiful. Who did this to you? Let me help you, okay?" That feminine voice caused a layer of tiny goosebumps to appear on Arbor's arms for no reason. Looking down the tree from the corner of her eyes, she saw that under a camphor tree not far away, a woman dressed in revealing black was half squatting there. Her fingers were like snakes caressing the handsome side of a person in front of her. Looking down from where she was, she could see that person's thin lips were tightly pursed with a pained expression on his face. It was actually someone familiar. Arbor blinked and his gaze landed on that man's limbs. His mood instantly seemed to be covered by dark clouds, and his eyes darkened. His limbs were all broken. Was this woman in front of him the one who did it? She could do whatever she wanted just for her own selfish desires? Chapter 3851. Just as Arbor was about to descend, a ball of black fog suddenly floated to her side and rubbed against the back of her neck. It felt rather cold. The little fellow shrunk her neck and turned her head to look. She saw a small claw reaching out from the fog and trying to grab a strand of her hair. Arbor was curious. She reached out her white and tender hand and shook the little claw. "I'm fine." She raised her hand and touched the ball of black fog. She could feel that this fellow's feelings were very complicated and mixed with a hint of displeasure. Could it be that it was apologizing to her? Because it didn't protect her properly just now and let her take old man Gao Dong's attack and spit out blood? Arbor tried to use her divine sense to communicate with this primordial beast. "Why must you be wrapped in this black fog?" Sir Jojo was still somewhat curious. "Don't you want to come out and see me?" She could feel that this fellow in front of her was a little resistant to seeing people. But why? Arbor reached out and reached into the black fog. She casually felt around. "Hongmeng, when are you going back this time? If you don't come out and see me now, you won't have another chance." Who knew if she would be able to summon it again next time? This beast was very powerful. She used a sacred-grade golden talisman to summon it here. She estimated that it could only stay here for half a day. it would still go back. As for where this primordial beast came from, Arbor wasn't sure. It could be the holy region, or it could be the border of the wilderness. This Hongmeng seemed to be conflicted for a long time. Then, it reluctantly poked its little head out of the black fog. It's furry. Arbor's eyes instantly widened. She raised her hand and instinctively touched Hongmeng's little head. This? Wasn't this fellow a little too cute? Its head was like a little bear's and its belly was round. It sat there, swinging its two short little legs. A pair of black eyes were looking at her, and they were very quick-witted. The most conspicuous part of its forehead was the word summon faintly appearing between the white fur. Arbor had thought that this vicious beast would be the type that looked mighty and domineering. Back then, when he saw it tear out a claw from the black fog, he thought that it was a ferocious beast with a head of copper and arms of iron. However, when he saw it, he was immediately discouraged. It's not even as sturdy as a snow leopard. Sir Jojo looked at him expressionlessly, thinking to himself that it was no wonder that every time this guy appeared, he would always be so mysterious, shrouded in a cloud of black fog, and never dared to show his face. If others knew that the primordial beast was actually such a cute thing, wouldn't they laugh their heads off? Since it was so cute, it could only hide in the black fog and not see anyone. The primordial beast didn't know why the little Master Silver's attitude towards it had suddenly changed 180 degrees. Could it be that his little Master Silver was still angry at him for failing to protect her? The primordial beast rolled over and stood up. It walked in the air with its short legs and hopped towards Arbor. Arbor said expressionlessly, "You'd better go back into your black fog. This way, it would appear more mighty and domineering. It would also make her feel less annoyed." Master Silver Heart was like a needle at the bottom of the sea. The primordial beast expressed that it didn't understand. If Chocho, Little Water, and Little Earth were here, they would definitely mock this fellow and solemnly warn it, "Master doesn't like cute things." Chapter 3852. After being delayed by this primordial chaos on the treetop, by the time Qiao Mu looked down again, there were already no traces of that man and woman in her sight. They moved them away so quickly. Arbor frowned slightly. She jumped down from the branch and landed lightly on the ground. Stepping on the soft soil beneath her feet, Qiao Mu circulated her divine conscience and swiftly spread it out in all directions. Although she didn't like the people from the Qin estate, seeing that person's arms and legs were all broken, she felt a trace of sympathy for them. Thus, she decided to lend him a hand. To the current Arbor, helping people was really just a matter of lifting a finger. Her divine sense was extremely powerful. It didn't take long for her to discover the figures of that woman and the zither cultivator in front of a small cave 100 meters to the west. He sure ran fast. Qiao Mu narrowed her indifferent eyes and disappeared from her spot in a flash. After more than 2 hours of experimentation, Arbor was now able to control the power of space in her body and accurately arrive at her destination within 5 kilometers. Thus, Arbor arrived in front of the cave in a mere breath's time. The sound of thunder echoed in her ears. Arbor expressionlessly raised her head to look at the dark sky. She saw dark clouds looming over her and thunder rumbling. It looked like a thunderstorm was about to descend. Seeing that this was a very normal natural occurrence, Arbor lowered her head and took out an oil paper umbrella from her inner world. As soon as she opened the umbrella cover, the torrential rain fell as scheduled. "It's really heavy," Arbor thought to herself. On such a stormy night, who would have thought that the lofty fifth young master of the Qin estate would actually be suffering such torment in such a simple and crude cave? Arbor stepped on the puddles of water in a flash and slowly arrived at the entrance of the cave. A woman's playful laughter came from inside. It was as soft as a venomous snake, causing one to be unable to help but feel disgusted. What a shameless woman. Not only was she brazen, she even broke someone else's arms and legs for her own pleasure. She deserved to die. Arbor's small face was incomparably cold as she stepped on the puddles of water and entered the cave. The cave was extremely dark. Only sporadic flames could be seen burning under a small, crude stove made of stones. There was a small stew pot on top of the stone stove, and he didn't know what was being stewed inside. A faint wisp of smoke was drifting over. The little girl sniffed and immediately revealed a look of disgust. What a shameless woman. She dared to stew this kind of salty medicine just to satisfy her own selfish desires. The little girl quickly walked over and kicked the woman's back without saying a word. Every kick was accurate, and the woman immediately rolled towards the corner of the wall, her big head fiercely knocking against the wall. It wasn't that Meng Mayo's cultivation was weak, but the main thing was that she really didn't expect that in such terrible weather, in such a remote cave in Phoenixwood Forest, they would actually be inexplicably attacked. She was completely defenseless. She was secretly happy that she had picked up a handsome man along the way. She thought that she was really blessed and could get anything she wanted. He planned to finish drinking the nourishing soup and then go find this beauty to do some good deeds. Thinking of this, his heart was very happy. Who would have thought that someone would suddenly interrupt him? Too deceitful. Truly too deceitful. Her pot of all-nourishing soup was also kicked to the ground by a little girl with a stoic face. Ah! Meng Mayu screamed. Chapter 38:53. She abruptly turned around and glared unwaveringly at the stoic-faced girl with a pair of gloomy eyes. She harshly rebuked, "Where did this damn girl come from? You actually dared to spoil the all-nourishment soup that I painstakingly refined with great difficulty." She was simply audacious to the extreme. Meng Mayu was about to explode from anger at Arbor. Especially when she saw the other party's tranquil little face, she couldn't help but ridicule her from the bottom of her heart. Which family did this girl come from? She dared to barge in so boldly and interrupt her fun, yet she didn't show the slightest bit of guilt. This vice cult Master Meng glared at Arbor in a bad mood and asked coldly, "Who are you?" "You. You don't deserve to know my name." Arbor took a step forward and flung out a vine whip without a second word. The vine whip scuttled out with a whoosh and whipped at Meng Mayo's wrist with lightning speed, tightly binding her left wrist. Meng Mayu was incessantly enraged. She lightly shook her wrist and made a wriggling snake pose. She coldly glared at the little stoic in front of her and said gloomily, "Don't blame me for being merciless since you're courting death." This was truly a case of refusing to take the path to heaven and barging into the doorless hell. She didn't even go out and ask around. Was she, Meng Mayu, someone who would suffer losses? Who in the entire demonic cult dared to provoke Vice Cult Master Meng? Who didn't know that Vice Cult Master Meng's reputation was widespread? This little girl who only had a faintly discernible wisp of spiritual energy fluctuation all over her body. She dared to meddle in Vice Cult Master Meng's business. Ha ha ha, this was truly hilarious. Arbor narrowed his eyes and coldly gazed at this girl whose wrist was shaking like a snake. Suddenly, he heard a shrill hiss from that girl's mouth, and a poisonous glint shot out of her eyes. Her originally normal hand extended several dozen meters forward like a withered branch. She didn't pause at all and directly reached in front of Arbor. Just as that withered branch-like hand was about to grip Arbor's neck, a cold glint of light flashed across his eyes. Meng Mayu suddenly let out a startled hiss. Half of the withered branch on her left arm was chopped off by Arbor's startled swan dagger. Yes, cut, cut, cut. Meng Mayo's branch-like arm retracted and returned to its original state. The broken branch that had fallen to the ground also reverted back to the shape of a finger. Bastard! Meng Meiyu covered her crippled hand and glared at Arbor. Something seemed to be surging out from the depths of her eyes. Ha! Sir Jojo glanced at her. It's fused with the snake wood. As a demonic body master, Vice Sect Master Meng was also a rank 13 Fire Great Spirit Master. Logically speaking, his strength should be quite good. However, this was only true for other people. Against Charles, he really had no chance of winning. Arbor was now a grade 1 god tier master. Although his divine sense was still at grade 6, it wasn't far from grade 7. As for the Divine Ruins realm, it had yet to open. The main reason was that the star field was still evolving. She reckoned that after she successfully transitioned from the star domain to the divine domain, the spiritual ruin realm in her body would also be able to take a step towards the divine ruin realm. Even if her current advancement was a bit incomplete and not fully mature, it was still more than enough to deal with this grade 13 Great Spirit Master in front of her. Moreover, the startled swan dagger had long been promoted to a divine artifact. The power of its dagger was naturally not something Meng Meiyu could block. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.